Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the ANZ Hearthstone Open. It's the start of week one. We're in the Murder of Castle Nathria expansion, and today the East Conference will be kicking off the competition. I'm Mendrix, and joining us on this joyous journey is the Wandering Bard. Bard, how has the wandering been?
It's been great. Obviously, I've been wandering around now away from this Hearthstone Open for many months now. It's been almost a year since we were last here together, Mendrix. It's great to be reunited. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this tournament goes because, of course, this is a really fresh new format, and that to me as a card game, just nut. It's always the most exciting time to watch these things because the decks are still being figured out, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I've been checking out all the metas, and seriously, who is on top has been just changing throughout the entire week. That being said, though, before we can jump into that action, we of course need to just shout out our sponsors as well. And of course, today it is going to be supported by Macca's. All the match highlights are going to be brought to you by McDonald's Australia, so make sure to catch up all the I'm loving it moments at the end of the show on Twitter. And of course, you can also have a bit of fun here with Mate Internet and Mobile. Make sure that you upgrade your mobile and internet with Mate Internet and Mobile, and also to be in the chance to win two card packs valued at $3.95. Just type into chat hashtag let's be mates, and there's a chance that you'll be able to pick that up. So make sure you put that out there, throw that into chat. We'll be checking that out to have a look into it as well. So but while the players are getting ready, we're going to be getting everything ready and tested, everything jumped into it as well. I'll sort of a quick chat about some of the cards that will be coming into the mix. I think something that we're both very excited about is actually Prince Renathal. Now, this is an interesting one because obviously a lot of card game formats at the moment get to enjoy the fact of having a little bit of extra cards into play. This card gives that opportunity for the players. Some deck builders can really be chomping at the bits to jump into this one.
Yeah, I hope we're going to see some of this today. At least one player might be very brave this early on in the expansion to bring this sort of card. But what this effectively does is change the rules of deck building, right? It gives you the chance to build a larger deck than usual, which is often considered a drawback. But given that Hearthstone tends to sort of have the limit of cards in your deck and the consequences of overdrawing be much more present on the average format than, other card games, to me, it's not always a drawback even, but you
Mm-hmm.
also get a reward of having extra life. And I'm excited to see, obviously, as time goes on, you mentioned this card is only going to get stronger, and players are going to, obviously, I think, benefit from having more time to figure out what kind of cards you need to put in this increased size 40 card deck to make it work.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea is that, hey, you've diluted your deck. Maybe you're not going to be able to hit your win condition right off the bat. But obviously, with more expansions, as time goes on, the more cards will be entered into play. You can start to swap in that dilution with stronger cards, better optimizations. And of course, the players that we've got coming into this as well, and just in general, love to play around, get those decks built. So this is going to be a really exciting card, not just for today, but obviously going into the future as well.
Yeah.
Or obviously, when we are going to be jumping into the East Conference, and our first players will be Dylan, Lupo, and Wet Goose. So those guys are just having a quick warm up, making sure everything is getting ready before we do jump into that play. I can see though at the moment in terms of what's been banned away. I'm just going to have a quick refresh to have a look into it. I believe that it was actually going to be Dylan Limpo's Imp Warlock that was banned away. Right now, this is a deck that is absolutely monstrous. So I can completely understand why they got rid of it. Of course, the new updates to Castle Nathria or Murder at Castle Nathria expansion, giving, I believe, Vile Library, Prince Reform. It is just literally warlocks making imps at the moment.
Yeah, it seems like that is the big card, I think. Currently, obviously, as you said, it's only week one, and part of the excitement of this being a league that's going to run over the next month or so is that I'm sure by the end of it, we'll have a much better idea of where exactly all these new cards stand. But Imp King Farm, that has to be like the highest impact card out of the new set for me, just in terms of what's happening on the ladder right now. And it's completely transformed the Warlock class. It's really given a shot in the arm to this whole Imp King archetype. And you and I think, both agree that this is probably going to be the deck that gets banned in most matchups. Now, that being said, not all our players have brought this deck, even if they've brought Warlock. Some of them are still on a lot of these older, cards that we're familiar with from even last season, the kind of handlock builds. But more and more, we're seeing this Imp Lock build take over.
Yeah, and I mean, at the moment in time, I think it's got like a 58% win rate just in terms of the general deck data at this moment in time. It is a monster. It's closely followed by Face Hunter, which of course has again a nice good injection of power thanks to the new infuse mechanic, Wild Seeds as well. Basically, the idea that you can just infuse your cards from minions dying, and of course, Hunters have a lot of like callback minions that can just generate extra value just by putting into wild seeds is a perfect example of it. Not only is it just going to give you a nice little bump of upfront power if you do manage to get into your early mulligan, at the same time, it is also going to be providing you infused stacks for your cards at hand.
Yeah. I do want to point out as well, like, you're not wrong at all about the stats on these cards right now. We're seeing this Implock deck and this Face Hunter deck do very well. Obviously, both quite aggressive, kind of classic aggro or minion swarm deck archetypes. But that shouldn't be taken to only mean that, oh, the Castle Nathria expansion is going to be aggro meta. Every game's going to be 5 minutes long.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's just, I think, a consequence of something that I think we even talked about last season, the classic progression of a meta through the early life of a new set release like this. It's going to be the aggro decks that get figured out first, because it's not that hard to put Imp King Rafarm in a deck, put every card that's an imp in the deck, and,
just start swarming with imps, right?
How
throwing
many
imps at
years?
you, mate.
How many years have all of these players been playing Face Hunter builds? Like, it doesn't change that much ever, right? And they're the easiest ones to figure out. Whereas the people who are trying to figure out the combo decks, having to tune the exact right mix of cards, get the idea for the deck even, or even the more just sort of mid-range control, value, high-cost kind of decks, those are more delicate instruments. And in part, you have to know what you're fighting before you can include the right reactive cards to try and combat it and keep yourself alive long enough to execute your plan. So I imagine that, just like last year, over time, we'll see this gradual progression where not only are players able to craft more of the new archetypes instead of carrying over kind of decks that they might just have made from the previous expansion, but we'll also probably see these control archetypes, these 40 card decks, these combo builds become more competitive in the meta, if not dominant.
Completely agree with it. And I know there's definitely a lot of other decks as well that actually got a little bit of love. I mean, take into account the fact that we do have Pelagos that's also coming in, really is a nice little bump up for those quest priests, of course, buff priests as well. Love to throw that in with those little bit of combinations with the, I believe it's the Serpent's Wig. So little updates as well coming across for them as well, just give them a little bit of injection of power coming from this expansion. And it's just so many other cards. I believe, I think one of the other interesting aspects was Side Denathrius, which is coming into. You were telling me about that one that you found. What's interesting is Shamans are actually playing this card. That's pretty cool. We were kind of thinking, oh, this is initially something that would be used by the ramp druids. Of course, the fact that they can just sort of like power on through to Side Denathrius and then start endlessly infusing afterwards. Really strong in terms of just pumping out those big card minions. But of course, the Shamans as well are taking a little bit out of that particular meta as well and having a bit of fun. So we're going to be interested to see something I think we want to actually talk to the players about as well, sort of what their feelings are on some of these cards, what are the strongest ones coming into the mix as well. I believe like Wild Bloom is another like really powerful card coming into it, and it's just so much happening at this moment in time. So I'm pretty excited to see what the players do with it as the tournament evolves, because of course this is the East Conference. We're going to have the West Conference, the North Conference, the South Conference. Hell, I'll throw into my own conference as well, just to have a little bit of fun on the side there. Me and you can battle out like we were doing beforehand.
I wasn't going to mention it, but I was wondering.
Maybe I can steal a win off you this time.
Will our rivalry continue? Well, if we play, it depends. In Mercenaries, I don't know if you got a shot. If we have to play actual Hearthstone, maybe you can get me. Maybe.
Possibly. Very possible in that one. Well, we should be jumping into the action shortly. I think we are getting the players ready to roll. They've obviously done their bans. They've had their warm-ups. I think everything should be good there. I think just pre-picking which deck they actually want to bring into and bring across. I'm having just a quick look at what decks are going to be available. Dylan Lupo will have his Shaman and, of course, his Face Hunter. He's not going to be using the new Face Hunter. I believe he's got a completely different one coming into it. I think there's going to be a few little mixes. Actually, no, he does have Wild Spirits in there, so he will be the more newer iteration coming into play. And Wet Goose will have his Handlock, a little bit older there. Does have a bit of those injections as well. We're talking about the Impending Catastrophe is going to be in there. I believe another different things. Gold Lake, of course, has those newer cards as well. I believe he's just deciding to make a few changes to it, not bring that Imp Warlock Zoo, but of course, it's just saying, hey, what can I take from everything here just to make it a little bit more powerful?
Yeah, exactly. That is an important thing to point out, right? Like, even if the players aren't like immediately going over to the sort of new archetypes, the new builds for their classes, that doesn't mean that they've just like, oh, I haven't logged into Hearthstone since the expansion came out. Like, all of the players in this competition have, been competitive clearly on the ladder when you look at their ranks and have been testing out the new cards. It's just a case of sometimes you have to value familiarity with the archetype. Like we saw that even last season from some of the very highly ranked players. You stick to the guns of the deck you've practiced, and you just incorporate what new tools it gains, and you trust that you're going to like make up that equity because either players are over prepared for the alternate archetype, or maybe they disrespect your older deck and they don't ban it. Like here, Wet Goose's Warlock got through unbanned, whereas Dylan with that up-to-date terrifying Imp Lock probably justifiably banned out. But if you really wanted to play Warlock, maybe you have to sort of threaten your opponent a little less, and instead of playing the number one deck right now.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting as well because we do know that with Dylan Limpo, Face Hunter, pretty straightforward. I'm going to start beating into your face as soon as possible. Looks like those Wild Seeds have also come out relatively early. As you can see, it does have the Bear and the Deer just sitting dormant for the time being. And Wet Goose, of course, is just we're going to continue tapping away. The big thing of these control Warlock decks is, of course, clearing the board, staying alive, getting towards that end game, and being able to really just suffocate your opponent, whether it's going to be with big hands coming into play there, whether it's going to be those Flesh Giants, or, of course, perhaps the Thames and Roan coming into effect and basically just life milling out their opponents.
Yeah, and I do appreciate how, these new cards, like, okay, the Wild Seed mechanic, this baddie guess, these are new cards. This isn't the old Face Hunter, but it's still just sort of all becomes part of the familiar Face Hunter playstyle, right? The new boss is the same as the old boss, and so it's great because if you are maybe not willing to completely relearn Hearthstone and you're just coming back to the game with the new expansion, you can pick up a deck like this, and you're not missing out on the new fun cards, but you are getting to play a familiar and intuitive playstyle. We'll describe. This is a scary board out of Dylan here.
Yeah, very quickly coming into play as well. As you can see, a lot that basically that water is going to be playing. I wonder what they're going to be using to actually clear this away on the side of Wet Goose. I don't really think he's got the cards in hand right now to make it happen. So honestly, I reckon it's just going to be another life tap. Maybe just play one card to get rid of something in particular. But yeah, it's very scary considering another Wild Seeds have come down as well. And this is just going to continue to strengthen up these cards. And of course, that new Infused mechanic coming into play. A lot of cards in hand here as well for Dylan Lupo, whoever will get those little advantages.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, this is kind of the intended playstyle of the Warlock. These two decks, like both of them probably feel like they're doing okay right now. The Warlock player is drawing a massive hand and now gets a big Goldshire Null. You've got these silencing Starfishes to play. You've got a lot of healing, so you don't mind so much going down low early on. But like, how low can you afford to go against a Face Hunter? Like, this isn't just any deck putting damage on you. This is like the great burst damage deck. So here you can see these Stag Spirit Wild Seeds. You can't really silence these in a way that matters, and Dylan has sequenced the times that they were created, so you can see they make this 4-2 weapon when they sort of emerge, they awaken from their dormancy. You've sequenced them out expertly, so you're going to maximize the number of Stag Point Wildbow hits you get in. I don't know that Wet Goose is going to be able to heal through this much damage.
No, it's going to be a lot there. He's already down to 14 HP. As you can see, he seems to have picked up a few more things. That has picked up a little of extra imps on the side there, but I don't think it's going to be enough there. So he's going to start draining the soul away. Obviously, you can see at least gets that 3 damage. It gets a little bit of health injection into the mix there. Touching Nathrazine as well allows him to get back to a point where he'll be relatively healthy. But like you said, those combos and damage will be continuing to be shot out here from Dylan Lupo. So just needs to sit back, play these cards in the right sort of sequences, and make sure that he holds on to too much, not really blows the entire amount of his arsenal right off the bat.
That's a pretty good draw to have, right? The entitled customer. I mean, we're talking about keeping yourself alive, but 20 life is enough that you're probably not going to die to the burst damage alone, right? There's quick shots and there's some weapons and things. There's some amount of burn direct that Dylan can point at the face, but if you're up at around this life total, Wet Goose isn't really concerned about dying to that alone. So as long as you can keep the board controlled from here, this could actually be a chance for the Warlock deck to turn the corner, and entitled customer just the best card hands down for doing that.
Absolutely. Well, the turn will be ending off the back here. As we can see, we do have those Wild Spirits continuing to get to a point where they'll be available to jump onto the board there. Just 2 turns in turn 2 turns in waiting, or one more turn we'll get that into play, and we'll also just drop down that bomb there for a little bit of good measure as well.
Yeah, Dylan having a think now, because this is kind of a crucial turn. That early momentum that I was so excited about has started to stall out here with how Wet Goose has managed their hand. You know, haven't been able to really develop the game plan aggressively yet. Those Ruined Mithril Rods are still stuck in hand, but the Warlock deck is definitely playing the long game in this one, so you're not really concerned as long as you're alive. Whereas Dylan now, the pressure is kind of on, even though you haven't taken any damage yet. You know that you're kind of working more against the clock or the sort of expected amount of damage you have left to deal before you inevitably get overtaken by the bigger game that Wet Goose is playing. So puts another bunch of damage on the face there, but with no more minions in play, I'm not sure here. It's getting dicey.
Yeah, things are starting to get a little bit scary here for Wet Goose as well. Does pick up what seems to be a bit of spice spread on the side there, so maybe you can play that in to get a little bit of extra head, a little bit of extra oomph coming into the mix there. But we'll have to wait to see if this players reconnect at this moment in time. Sometimes on the unfortunate parts of the online scheme. But yeah, I'm trying to think if he's got any way through this right now. Of course, can continue to tap down at 14 life. It really begins to make you think. Obviously, when you're around 30, 28, even in those 20s, you go, yep, just keep tapping. Give me more options. Give me more things to happen here at this moment in time. But now seems to be digging for a few more options to play here. We'll play that Spice Spread Breaker as well, just to get that HP back into play here as well. But of course, now that it's gone back to Dylan Limpo, those beasts are awakening. A 5-4 and a 2-5 coming into play. And yeah, it's just getting a bit rough here now for Wet Goose.
Yeah. Dylan puts together kind of a board. That's what you want to do at this point. You need to be able to make multiple threats on one turn, and that's why I'm a little bit surprised we haven't seen Aralon on any of these turns. Like, maybe you could use that to try and set up a big tempo swing. So you want to try and make it hard for Wet Goose to answer everything you're doing in one turn. And obviously, as Wet Goose gets access to more and more mana, it becomes harder and harder to expect that Wet Goose won't have the answer. But we're holding on to our big guns for as long as we can here, and Dylan really just looking to try and end the game, maybe even next turn. But can Wet Goose get out of it? On 10 life, we can see that that's not enough. With the amount of burn that's available, but with the entitled customer, that's going to clear the board, but not heal the Warlock. And so now Dylan looks to have calculated accurately. You sort of pose the threat with the board, but with 4 damage from the bow and 2 quick shots in hand.
Yeah, I believe he should be having lethal very close as well. Maybe not just there. We'll summon through Aralon as well. Get a few of those extra dormant seeds into the mix as well. That's just extra power coming into it very shortly as well. Clearing out the entitled customer. As you can see there as well, just a little bit of extra damage. So isn't looking for the kill right up, but definitely will have pretty close to lethal in the next turn.
Dreadlich Tamsin
coming into play here. Basically, we'll provide a little bit of extra life into that, as you can see, bit of armor, up to 11 at this moment in time now. Obviously, it brings back a new hero power into the play here. The Gold Shadow Null will come down to just clear away everything that needs to be in that scenario here. And as you can see, we'll also soak up a little bit of extra life. But of course, next couple of turns there needs a bit more, obviously, with these Wild Seeds as time goes on. They're going to be launching just yet, so maybe that might buy enough time for Wet Goose to get back into this.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mentioned before how important it is to try and awaken these Wild Seeds together so that they, your opponent has to answer all of them at once. But even though they're all spawned together, they don't awaken at the same time. And so now with that buff, we're going to be able to clear the board at least. But Wet Goose has really played this masterfully so far, even sort of managing the life total, getting to that specific spot where it was risky to sit on 10 life, but it means you get the effective healing out of transforming into Dreadlich Tamsin. And
how good. What a nice pickup there.
Stacked.
That's a very nice pickup as well at the end of it as well. So is able to say, yeah, you know what, if I am feeling a little bit too uncomfortable with everything that's happening here, I can drop down the Spice Spread Baker again, get a little bit of extra health back into the mixer, because of course that hand, like you said, is very stacked there. Back up to 17 life as well. Also, we'll throw down an extra minion on the back end, and it gets another wicked shipment as well. And I feel like Wet Goose has weathered the storm.
Yeah, at this point, you're back up to 20 life. You're transformed into your, upgraded hero form. You are in the late game. You haven't even used all the tools you have in hand. Like, we just drew Tamsin Rome. We've got Imp Ending, Catastrophe, and Wicked Shipment still available. So there's going to be plenty of card draw to pick up all these rifts that you're shuffling into your deck if you feel like, you need a reload late game. And Dylan has done a great job of sort of conserving resources in hand. Like, this Hunter isn't gassed yet, technically. But at this point, you wonder, like, how many more real big shots of damage can you fire across the bow of this Warlock deck? And when your Warlock is going up in health from turn to turn, that's just, it's kind of already over for a Face Hunter deck, right?
Yeah, the juice seems to be running a bit low, especially if you're using your face to attack directly to clear out those minions. So things looking a bit scary on that side as well. I mean, 18 life as well. Plenty of options available for Wet Goose here. Can continue to sort of just play through everything there. Has those options to continue swapping out, of course, with those wicked shipments as well, just to trade for perhaps better options as well. Is thinking about playing out that Rune Mithril Rod as well, of course, granting a little bit of extra card draw as things come into it or you use those abilities. So let's see what comes into play now. We'll be dropping that in there. Another wicked shipment. So just looking for options at this moment in time. But actually, no, we'll be playing that just to get a little bit of extra mix into it. And the combo's coming in, like you mentioned.
Yeah, this is when we talk about the late game and this being a control deck, this is why, right? Like, it's changed a little from the quest lock of old. You're trying to empty your deck. This time, you're not so much emptying your deck so that you can actually actively overdraw. But once you get down low, your whole deck sort of becomes these free Dread Imps that we can see being summoned directly from the deck. And you can combine that so we just the Wicked Shipment as your draw engine through the mid game. And now we have these runed Mithril Rods we've been holding the whole time. We can overdraw with the 4 Imp Summon effect plus the Impending Doom. You can sort of see the combo coming out, and it's going to be more than enough when you can see that the Hunter has already fired its best shot. It doesn't have enough left to deal with all these Imps.
Well, let's see what Dylanpo might have in response as well. Not really the best card. It does have that Rise on Ajan come into play here as well, so that's coming into it. Collateral damage will be enough to clear out a lot of the minions and do a nice chunk of damage.
Actually, oh my goodness!
Well. He's actually got lethal off the back of that.
I underestimated that collateral damage. The Imps didn't...
Oh my god.
There's too many 1/1s in play, and maybe that's what Dylan was waiting for the whole time. Wow, what a way to end the match. Weku's clearly thought, as we did, that it was time to turn the corner. We so patiently held all those Imp cards, and now we transition to the late game plan. With just a 2-power bear in play, how bad could it be? How big is the potential lethal? But that collateral damage, that's so much spell damage direct to the face, closes the game out in an instant, Mendrix.
Yeah, it was just so much right off the back there. Then was able to play everything he needed to. That little combination was just into play, and you need to have just a bit more HP at that point in order to survive it as well. Who would have thought Face Hunter could come through with so much damage towards the later stages of the game? You can really see now these combinations that players have put into play here. Perhaps a little late game insurance really is coming into effect, and that means that, of course, that Dylan Lupo is able to win with that Hunter. It's going to be retired. That means he's left with just his Shaman.
Yeah, and look, I guess I wouldn't take that loss too hard if I were Wet Goose, because at the start of the game, it really kind of felt like the Face Hunter was advantaged and probably could have closed it out. So bitter to sort of get that far into your game plan and still lose, and maybe you need to even reconsider how you play against Face Hunter to deny them the chance to use that card so effectively. But you just sort of write it off mentally and you move on. There'll be time to review the video after the tournament. For now, you have to close it out against this Shaman deck.
Well, that being said, there, Wet Goose says, hey, you know what? Maybe things could have been just a little bit better if I had a different sequencing coming into that mix as well. We'll mull away again 3 of the cards there: Hellfire, the Spice, Bread Baker. And we'll be able to grab that, of course, the coin just on the mixes this as well. Let's see what Dylan Lupo can do with this Shaman deck, though. Interested to see how it plays out now, of course, that we've moved into the Castle Nathria expansion.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the Shaman decks. It's not as clear a split as the Warlock decks between this person's playing the old Handlock build, this person's playing the new Implock build. The Shaman decks is more like, which type of Murloc Shaman are you playing? You know, some people are playing this Sire Denathrius version, this sort of control Murloc Shaman, so to speak, that goes a bit bigger. I can't recall if Dylan is playing... I think Dylan is playing the more traditional Murloc Shaman build, but even then, there's like several different sort of sub-approaches to playing Murloc Shaman. You just kind of have this mass of synergistic Murloc cards, and around that, you can actually kind of choose your strategy, which I like.
Yeah, definitely is playing a much more aggressive sort of play style as well. And if you can see, Dylan Lupo doesn't understand what needs to be played here. Wet Goose quite happy to life tap away in those scenarios as well. And we'll have those ruined Mithril Rods for the late game, which again is nice to have. I mean, you want to have some of those combinations in order to really draw out those power later. But of course, it is a bit rough to have it now when you're trying to survive through what's going to be a number of Murlocs chomping down very, very shortly.
Now, Mendrix, do you, in your opinion, is this going to be sort of an easier or a harder matchup for Wet Goose? Because we just saw this Warlock deck against an aggressive Face Hunter. and that didn't end up going so well. Is the Murloc matchup going to be a little bit easier because of the lack of the insane burn damage out of Face Hunter?
I reckon it gives you a little bit more options, to be perfectly honest. I think the big thing here for the Face Hunters at the moment and why they're so popular is because you just have so much synergy between the Wild Seeds coming in with the new Infuse mechanic, so you can really just ramp out a lot of pressure, and that requires your opponent to really think through either their sequences, perhaps burn some of the late game synergies in order to have at least some survivability to get towards that late game. And as you can see, that means that obviously that you're able to have some nice finishes like Dylan Lupo had there. But I mean, like looking at the synergy coming across here as well, already has a very huge board coming into play here as well. I'm not sure though, because of course he's only got 3 cards in hand there, so Dylan Lupo really needs to have it. And one thing to note, that Hellfire didn't seem to be present like it was last game. And the other thing as well that's really powerful about the Wild Seeds is they sit there dormant, right? It's like this sort of impending doom of, hey, I'm generating value. You can see that I'm about to have a very big deck or a very big board coming into play, but you just can't clear it immediately. And as you're playing more Wild Seeds as time goes on, you basically have those refueling minions coming into play without really using too much of your hand, and that wave clear needs to be held for a little bit later than you'd like to, which of course gives more opportunities for your opponent to deal more damage. But as you can see, already buffed up those Murlocs very quickly into the play as well, so let's see how Wet Goose deals with it.
Yeah, I think you touched on why I thought that maybe this could be a little bit easier for the Warlock. As you said, you sort of have a few more options. You can play a bit more conventionally. And that's why, right? Like the Murloc deck, it presents its board, it builds a board, it builds a board. You can burn it down. Whereas you identified exactly why the Wild Seeds are so good for the Hunter deck. And I want to go into that a little bit more deeply, as it looks like Dylan Lupo at least might be going into a bit of a more rebuilding phase. We just see all of those resources just mopped up by entitled customer, have to try and figure out a way to get back into the game. But the fact that the minions are delayed seems like it's the opposite of what you'd want from an aggressive deck archetype, right? Like at least at face value, you think, oh, why am I waiting 4 turns if I'm an early game focused, face damage deck? But it is about compressing the sort of value of those cards. Like whatever card you spend that makes the Wild Seed, you're sort of saving that mana for a future turn so that you can kind of do 2 or 3 turns worth of pressure in the space of 1 turn that your opponent has to try and answer all that, right? Like, because the worst thing for you to have happen is this sort of situation as an aggro deck where your opponent has your board under control, and now no matter what you play, they've got so many cards in hand, they're going to be able to deal with it. You're never going to sort of have them feel threatened, have them in check ever again. But maybe if you can build up 2 or 3 turns worth of mana at once, and your opponent can't just wipe on 1 turn, wipe on the next turn, heal on the 3rd turn. They have 1 turn, and they simply can't play 3 cards at once like you can.
Yeah, it is definitely rough in that sense. You can sort of see that point of where Dylan Lupo now has just run out of gas, has no more cards in hand there. Yeah, that's a very nice board as well, but I feel Wet Goose was in a much more comfortable position the same time around. Well, actually, was in a much worse position the same time around when it was against the Face Hunter. So feeling a lot more comfortable this time around here. You can see there is obviously playing things out. We'll clear most of the board once again. I'll get it relatively low, and now with these Touch of the Nathrezines, we're able to clear out the rest of it because we're able to die off the back end, get that HP back, and I don't see any immediate lethal threat that Dylan Lupo had last time with this Murloc deck.
Yeah, you can see just how these differences in how the 2 aggro decks like approach the game that have made it completely different and much easier and more comfortable for Wet Goose. Last game, we didn't see Tamsin Roam or the the Mithril Rods hit the battlefield really ever because of how risky it is to not like clear the board completely, and how awkward those Wild Seeds make the timing of things. Just the fact that you can hold a bunch of cards in hand as the Hunter and represent God knows how much damage means that like Wet Goose can't just play this game of, well, I'll life tap my way all the way down, or I'll just leave some of your minions alive. The Warlock thrives in a situation where it knows sort of how much damage it's going to be taking because it can count your minions on board, and it can know when it gets to be greedy and sort of build up the hand versus when it has to absolutely kill everything. But against Face Hunter, you have to respect the huge burst damage potential, and also your players sort of controlled by the timing of those Wild Seed awakenings.
Yeah, things definitely looking very different here as well. You can see that, yeah, maybe I've discovered the Hunter power, but I just don't have the same Hunter ammo. and it is really a rough moment now. Now it's going to be Wet Goose who turns the tables, turn that corner, has a lot of minions onto board here as well. It seems now it's going to be him trying to sort of rip away at most of what's available on the board here, but now I think Wet Goose is going to start hitting hard.
Yeah, I don't want to curse Wet Goose because last game when I started talking about how cool this Warlock's late game was and how we were turning the corner, Wet Goose suddenly died. But with Dylan Lupo's hand being completely empty and Wet Goose being at essentially full life, this is, as you said, a very different and much more one-sided situation. Dylan Lupo playing it out bravely, but yeah, I don't think you're going to just steady shot your way to victory this time.
Well, as you can see, Wet Goose is also playing it a little bit more conservative as well. It's quite happy to say, you know what, I'm just going to make sure your board's clear. I don't want to have any random one-turn kills from collateral damage pop up out of the blue, so I'm going to make sure these things are cleared away. As long as my board, I'm going to have a number of power cards in hand as well, and now that means probably the next couple of turns I can start to wear you down and finally bring out the true power of my Warlock deck.
Exactly, right? I mean, at its heart, it's still a control deck. The Warlock deck sees no reason to ever race with you. Even when it would be getting a head start in that race, there's just no reason to ever give Dylan a board, especially with a Murloc deck, right? Because the Murlocs they're about synergy with other Murlocs. Why would you leave some Murlocs in play to get buffed or combo with anything when you can just continually wear Dylan down? You aren't the one running out of resources.
Well, is now just happy to sit back and relax this time as well. As you can see, we'll use that hero power for the time being. We'll, of course, just blow away. Look at those mines just doing that extra damage from that initial death rattle as well. The Spice Bread Baker as well, just say, you know what? I've got this as well on hand, and I feel like now it's a bit of salt in the injury here. Wet Goose is just happily playing these cards as needed to be as well, discovering everything and saying, now I just need to finish you off. Let me get all I need here at this moment in time. He's even using the Hellfire.
Oh my god.
Very, very happy opening there. That is actually ridiculous. That is one hell of a combination there.
Wombo combo.
Wet Goose have. Like, yeah, he's looking for options here. No, he's just playing with his food at that moment.
Yeah, no, that's just flexing, just doing an end zone dance there. Which, like, look, after game one, you kind of got to win for two. You got to win enough for 2 games there. You really got to win on them with that Warlock deck. So now it's one apiece, and Mendrix, we are in our very first game already into an exciting game 3 matchup. So it's going to be that Murloc Shaman deck against which deck out of Wet Goose?
Seems to be it's another Shaman deck here as well coming into it, but it seems to be a little bit more mid-range in terms of it's going to be running that side to Nathrius like you were talking about before. So definitely a little bit of an interesting play coming to it. Another interesting card that's also come out of the Myrtle Akasa Nathria expansion is Theater the Mad Duke. Now, this is being played here by Wet Goose. This is a very interesting card in terms of what it brings to play, purely because what you do is you discover a card, in each player's hand, and then you swap it. So what you're hoping to do is you have a really crappy card in your hand, and they've got a really good card in their hand, and you swap. But what I'm looking at here, I don't think that's something that you want to be playing against a aggro Murloc deck, because... yeah, there's going to be a lot of nice cards there. Not really, not a lot of nice cards. You've got a lot of pressure cards coming from Lupo. But when I look at Wet Goose, he's got a hell of nice cards coming to him. He's got, Brucana of the Elements. He's got Mutinous the Devourer. He's got a lot more powerful cards in hand there. So you might actually be trading away one of your better cards to what might just end up being a relatively okay Murloc card coming into play.
I mean, that's the nature of, you've just hit exactly on the nature of a control deck or, this kind of slower deck, and the contrast that we were talking about that makes some of these aggro builds easier to play, especially at the start of an expansion. Like, that card sounds tremendous against any sort of combo win-con kind of deck, right? Imagine just ripping their key card that they're holding the whole game, They're charging it up or discounting something and you just take it. Like, you just can't win anymore in some cases. But yeah, as you said, against an aggro deck, you're probably giving them a better card than they have in their entire deck. And in return, you get like a 1-drop or something. So... yeah, and exactly, if you draw the sort of wrong card in the wrong matchup, it can really hamper you, especially if you're not a class like a Warlock that just kind of has free access to mass card draw. So I'm sure that there's, trade-offs for it, and this control Murloc Shaman has been very popular. At least it is also a Murloc Shaman deck, so if you take a Murloc off your opponent, you can use probably have some value for
There's
it.
Some
exactly.
Synergy. There's some synergy, but... again, when you've got so much more powerful cards in your arsenal, you really don't want to be trading anything too crazy away. For let's be honest, a Murloc.
Yeah,
I mean,
so it just means you try and mulligan away Theotara, and you hope not to draw it, right?
exactly. Or well, the thing is, well, you have to choose to play it as well. So I'm not sure if that's really going to be the mix in here. I imagine they're probably just going to be like, I'm just going to hold on to Theotara, like you say, mulligan it away. I'll just hold on to it. Perhaps use it in very dire circumstances.
But we're into the game now. It looks like both players keeping hands of Murlocs, as you'd expect, and I'm glad that we're basically immediately going to see the contrast between the two builds that I was describing before. You can sort of see a lot of cards similar between these two lists, but enough different that they play really, uniquely from each other.
Well, we can see that Dylan Poe will immediately play that Sir Fenley. He does not want to be running the typical Shaman hero power. Wants to get that mage into play. Of course, a very versatile hero power. 1 damage wherever you want, or wherever you want to point it, is definitely very useful, especially if you can't quite clear a board. Perhaps there is 1 minion sitting there on 1 life. You're like, I've got just the thing for you, my hero power, and already is beginning to ramp up all those Murlocs with some extra damage into play. So expect some face damage to come soon now for Dylan Lupo towards Wet Goose's way.
Yeah, exactly, and especially compared to your average control deck, you're going to have much more opportunity to finish off sort of small health minions, because it is still a Murloc-based deck. Both players are going to have boards. Both players are going to have, boards off, relatively fragile Murlocs, and the Mage Power is going to give Dylan a huge edge in terms of trading efficiently, which can make all the difference when you're trying to, you get a clear by trading sort of a significantly weaker creature in instead of the bigger minion on your board, and that means you're going to be pushing more damage. That's the kind of thing that adds up over 2 or 3 turns and makes the difference between finishing off Wet Goose and Wet Goose getting to play a card like Sire Denathrius and just turn the game on its head.
What we can see now as well is going to be using these piranhas to sort of get a little bit of extra oomph into this as well to clear away that board. We'll also have the Null in play, so a little bit of extra strength here right now just in terms of what's on the board here for Wet Goose. An excellent number of cards here for Wet Goose available, so we'll have a lot of ammo in the arsenal coming into the next couple of turns. But of course, Dylan does have that card draw, will bring up a number of extra Murlocs into play here and once again refill his board.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw in the other matchup that we got of Dylan playing this deck how it can run out of gas. It isn't, which I like from a game design perspective. I think that it should be a loss condition, a thing that you're threatened by when you play these sorts of aggro decks, that you are capable of running out of cards. You don't just sort of refill your hand automatically. Sometimes in games, designers get carried away with giving aggro decks drawing power or something, or there's some weird combo, but pretty honest here. You just got to use what you've got. You got to respect these Murloc minions. They have to go the distance for you, and unfortunately with the power of Goldshire Null, that's such a brutal thing when it's able to trade off with not just the first minion it hits, but stick around to eat a second one.
Well, we can see Cookie the Cook is coming down as well. Like you said, that Null's happy to just trade off there, wants to get rid of that one onto the board, so just continuing to chip away at Dylan Willipper's boards. He'll throw down the Lushwater Mercenary, just have a nice little buff on the side there, because of course the Murloc is still going to be live. And I'm just checking to see that. I mean, the Amalgam, I believe, was just played before as well. As you can see, did choose...
Yep.
Had a bit of not the best choices coming into that play. Opted in for a little bit of the weaker Murlocs into that, just to have a little bit of extra oomph to survive, I imagine, at that moment in time. Schooling, of course, is going to be the card pick up there for Wet Goose. And I think now it's quite happy. We'll be happy to have something a little bit more power and oomph behind it instead of these earlier game cards.
Yeah, exactly. It's just sort of... You're okay getting medium value from that Amalgam, because it's just about, you don't need to get mega optimal performances out of every card in your deck as Wet Goose. You just need to make sure you're preserving your life total. It's much more important than it is with the Warlock deck, because comparatively, Wet Goose doesn't have that kind of healing power. We do have Cookie in play, which is a really lovely card to have in this matchup, but in general, you have to just not take the damage to start with where possible, and you have to keep Dylan from building up a board so that cards like that Nothing Can Stop Us that's in hand don't end up, suddenly exploding your life total. And so far, it looks like Wet Goose is easily managing to do that.
Yeah, he's looking very healthy at this moment in time. The gas for Dylan Lupo seems to be running out as well. Does throw down that wild Paul Cavern, which is going to be nice to just keep on, basically provides that 3-4 value, that freeze as well, which is really nice. But at the end of the day, I think Wet Goose is pretty happy overall what's happening here. He's just going to clear that away and start putting the damage back into his favor as well. Has that life total still at 30, so doesn't really even need that cookie on the board at the moment. It's just a nice extra buffer.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive to me how fast Wet Goose has been able to like take control of this matchup. I really thought that it was going to be more even in terms of hand size, because these decks are, you know, all playing cheap cards. They're playing similar cards, in many cases the exact same cards. So to have Wet Goose, you know, be able to sort of easily deal with what Dylan is doing and still have all these resources available. Obviously, the important resources are life and mana per turn, so much as, like, you know, you can still be dead with a full hand, but Wet Goose is on 30. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, he's looking pretty good there. We'll throw out that Firemance as well, just to do a little bit extra damage to that clear as well. You can see that extra damage there coming across to get rid of them enemies as well. And as you can see, it has another Firemance of Flurgy as a choice there. The Red Guild will immediately just grab that. Yeah, as you can see, he's happy to use that Firemance to clear everything away.
The best possible thing.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if he just drops it down again.
That's so brutal.
Yeah, I'm just going to play it again as well.
Just an unnecessary level of destruction.
He's doing it again. Wet Goose is doing the exact same thing again that he did last time. He's like, yep, no worries, let me just show you what I can do. Another play as well. Throw that Piranha Swammer as well.
My specialty is overkill.
Yeah. Muck pulls as well, just a little bit of extra. Let's see what he does with it. Yeah. Oh, it's actually just rough there. Like, oh my god, what was that change there? That is filthy. He's got a 3-9 off the back of that.
Yeah, the new locations as well. It's really interesting, the kind of mechanics that are coming out from this this most recent expansion, to kind of like, I talked about this kind of tempo properties of the wild seeds. It seems to be sort of a focus more broadly, and I really like the extra dimension that adds to gameplay in Hearthstone.
Oh, well, Dylan Lupo, I think, realizes there's not much that can happen there. Does use No Fin can stop us there. I mean, it isn't. It's nice, a little buff, but
just showing your opponent. Yeah, I had this the whole time. God damn it! Look how useless this card is.
I've been done probably sitting there going, "Oh, I know that pain." I imagine all of them have played aggro decks at some point in time. And they realize, yeah, there's not much we can do here. He's got something on the board here as well, but I think now Wet Goose is like, okay, man, I'm just gonna put you out of your misery. Yeah. And we're going to end this match here. And it will be Wet Goose to come back after initially losing the first match. Of course, that Face Hunter just too damn strong. I mean, we do know why it's got such an amazing win rate. But in terms of the decks that's available here for Wet Goose, really did think it through and said, you know what, I'm not going to take that Imp Zoo Warlock there, but I'm going to have a pretty strong Warlock deck regardless, which will allow me to survive everything through. And of course, let me have a bit more power in my deck choice.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of the deck choices from Wet Goose lined up really well. Dylan brought that aggro deck lineup, and when you've got the board clear of the Warlock, even though you might have one game stolen away from you, you feel confident that you're going to be able to close things out. And even with the other control deck, the Control Murloc Shaman looking really good, at least in that matchup, in the mirror as well. So perhaps that's why we see players pivoting to that new version. But we'll get a chance to sort of survey the scene more thoroughly as this tournament and future weeks continue, Mendrix.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more on that one as well. I believe we're thinking about possibly going to a quick 2-minute break as well. We do wait to see when the players will be ready. So, guys, please hold on just a little bit there. We'll get the next match available for you. A lot more Hearthstone action to go on, not only just today, but of course throughout the weeks of the tournaments and all the possible conferences. So, please, guys, hold tight. We'll be right back. And we are back with the ANZ Hearthstone Open. If you're just joining us, we did have Dylan Lupo going up against our friend there. I believe, my mind has just literally
Wet
exploded with that
Goose.
exhibit. Wet Goose, that's correct there.
Not
Wet
forgetting
Goose,
that username.
of course, exactly. Wet Goose was able to come out victorious up against Dylan Lupo, but of course, there's still going to be some chances there for Dylan Lupo to get back into it. We are going to be moving now into this still in the same bracket, still in the winners bracket at this moment in time there, and it's going to be JJ up against Absolute Zero. Now, what's really nice about that as well is that JJ has recently, or was playing in the previous competition beforehand, so very excited to see what these guys will be bringing to the board. Another thing to note as well, guys, is that whoever wins this tournament, or who's going to be winning the tournament, will be able to walk away with a nice little bit of a prize package as well. I believe it's $50 for the first place, $25 for second place. And of course, those who are the top two to win will be moving forward to the next round of the competition, where there'll be more goodies up for grabs. Now, wondering, Bud, I think we're going to be jumping into the action relatively soon there. What do you expect to see coming into it? Because I think Skeleton Mage is still going to be onto the board here as well. Not going to be happening just at this moment in time. There's going to be the Warlocks coming into play up against the Hunter, though.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about the Skeleton Mage or the Ping Mage deck. That's another one of the sort of newer archetypes that we've seen emerge since the recent release of the Murder at Castle Nathria expansion. But instead, we get to look at this Warlock deck, pretty similar to the one we saw last time. Again, combining some of those new cards with the sort of older Rune Mithril Rod draw plan and Dreadlich Tamsin for the end game. I'm really sad about one of the decks that we got banned out, though, unfortunately. JJ had an excellent-looking ramp druid list that is running that Prince Renathal card, the one that sets your starting deck size to 40 cards. So don't get to see our sort of theory discussion from before.
So sad.
I'll try not to root against Absolute Zero too hard, just because I want to see JJ go to the next round and hopefully not have that deck banned. But we do get to see something interesting in the meantime, as this is Quest Hunter, so not the same Hunter deck as we just saw at all. Defend the Dwarven District's going to be defining a different sort of game plan somewhat for JJ.
Yeah, what is going to be interesting, though, is that Prince Renathal will be played in this Hunter deck, though, which means that, as you can see, that 40 life is in play. They will have those extra cards to come into play as well. So definitely a bit interesting in terms of what we would expect. Normally we'd be seeing face hunters get played, right? You can see that's probably going to be banned away immediately, so we thought, hey, you know what, I'll have a bit of fun there, throw out that quest hunter instead there, and we'll basically just throw out that blood mage Thalnos for the time being as well. It does have that quest up and running at the moment in time there, so it just needs to get through a little bit of hero power. So it's just deal damage with 2 spells, obviously, to change that hero power right on up.
Yeah, it's a really interesting approach to the deck building as well. I'll be honest, I didn't immediately see Renathal in the deck, so I just thought, okay, Quest Hunter, sure, you're doing the quest stuff, you got spell damage, you're going to burn your opponent out, that's fine. And the ramp druid, that's definitely the kind of deck I expect to be played alongside a card like Renathal.
Had so many juicy cards. Many juicy cards, Bard, unfortunately.
Exactly. It's like I just get to play more of my big greedy legends, and I have 40 life, so I'm not going to die before I get to start playing them. I have time to just ramp up and ignore your early game, more or less. That all makes sense to me. But you look at this instead, it's like, this is a very intriguing approach. But it all sort of follows the same logic, where if you have a large deck, you can't rely on any specific card to win you the game. So your game plan has to be the kind where it doesn't really matter exactly which cards you draw. Your cards kind of have to all kind of add up to the same sum, and whether that's all of my cards are just good, strong legendaries that draw cards and gain life and destroy your cards, and I basically can't lose because I'm just playing Wallet Druid, or in this case, all of my spells deal damage, and it doesn't matter which ones I draw, they're all going to advance my quest line, they're all going to pressure your life total, and I've got 40 life. So if it's a race, I'm going to win. It's kind of ingenious.
Yeah, it's a nice little play into it as well. And like you said, that idea of just, well, what's some of the issues that probably these more aggro-focused decks have? I mean, it is going to be Quest Hunter, so it's not as aggro-focused, but the idea is, hey, you know what? I can just continue to play these cards basically back off and just draw that normal mid-range value. I'm not going to run out of gas. As long as I've got a little bit of extra card draw, I have those extra cards in play here, I can just continue to just throw out waves upon waves of minions, or throw out waves upon waves of spells, and that is going to be very tough for the opponent to deal with. So Absolute Zero already down to 14 HP as well. We know that typically the Warlocks are normally fine with this case here, but one of the reasons they're able to survive and do a little bit more is because they've got minions to suck life from. Doesn't seem to be the case here with JJ at the moment. Yeah, he's fishing out that damage. Doesn't have that large board that you expect from typical face hunter decks, but there is less opportunities for Absolute Zero to actually suck some life back and remain relatively healthy. So it is going to be interesting to see how Absolute Zero navigates this particular play and what sequence he decides to throw into it. Does have that big null though in play for the time being, that 5/4, so it's going to be a little bit of extra value coming through from there. But of course, this quest line is going to continue to be pushed forward here, so he needs to start putting in some real damage into JJ, who's still looking pretty healthy at 36.
Exactly, at 36, yeah, pretty healthy in being 6 life above the normal maximum. That's just it, right? That's the point of this deck, and the more I look at it, the more exciting it is to see, because you are denying a lot of the cards in Absolute Zero's decks that should be good against an aggressive matchup, and normally you would be worried about running out of gas if your deck is all just these direct damage spells, right? They're very flexible in how you apply them, but if your whole deck is this and you're relying on very few minions, then you basically need to point them all at face, especially against a deck like Warlock that could potentially heal a lot. But like you said, you're denying targets for a lot of the healing spells. You're wasting cards like Hellfire that would normally be your backup plan against an aggro deck. You assume that's going to stop them from damaging you because you're clearing the board, but JJ doesn't even have a board. It doesn't matter. So now Absolute Zero just has to find specifically either healing cards or ways to more likely pressure your opponent and try and race. And normally this kind of null would be a great card, but when your opponent starts on 40 life, I just don't know that you can switch to being the beatdown fast enough.
Yeah, it is looking rough. They're down to 10 life as well at this moment in time. The impending catastrophe is being played there, but that is 100% desperation there. It's just like, hey, you control no imps at the moment. This is literally him digging right now for a solution there. Does get that Fiendish Circle, which is nice. It would be nice to have that a little bit earlier before. He's killing his own minions to suck life back.
Feeling like the smartest person on Earth. When you see your opponent like casting Drain Soul on their own minion, that's like their one hope of finishing you off before you explode them. Meanwhile, you're like finishing your quest, you're sitting on a 0-cost hero power, you're just vibing, you have a casual Aralon in hand that you're probably not going to use. This is great. The spill over the piercing shot on after you drained your own drained your own minion to heal yourself, but you actually ended up costing yourself life or going neutral because you allowed the spill damage from piercing shot. This is absolute brutality, and Absolute Zero just thanking their lucky stars. This is BO3.
The Smothering Starfish does nothing. It's like silence all other minions. That's great.
What other minions, baby? Sylvanas is just... This is just like watching a sniper scene in a movie. There's like the sniper scene in Full Metal Jacket, right? Like, you can't even see your opponent. This is not a fair fight. There's nothing to attack here. There's nothing to drain. There's just like bullets just fly, big magical arrows just smashing into your health total.
Oh, this is something. Okay. He's like,
okay,
right.
We found it.
I've got some life back. I'm back to 15. Everything's okay. He uses another impending catastrophe. Yeah,
but you see here, JJ is not like remotely out of gas.
Yeah, well, again,
0-cost heady.
Has plenty of cards here, like immediately putting that damage back in. Explosives Trap, has like again the 7/7 coming into play. They've completed the quest. I mean, this is.
How is Tavish's Battlecry for the rest of the game, right? It's a 5-cost 7/7. I figure, okay, well it costs a 5 so that they make you have to do one big combo turn with 5 less mana. A lot of decks in Hearthstone history, no, just effectively for the rest of the game, all your spells have +2 face damage tacked onto them.
Hey, you know what they say? Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Like,
I couldn't hate this Mendrix. This is great deck building. It's a really cool like twist on the archetype, and I thought you were gonna have to wait to see people, doing interesting things with Prince Renathal, but not so. Unfortunately, that 7/7 body does mean that finally Absolute Zero can do something with these drains that are in hand. Double Drain Soul coming out thanks to Tamsin, and that's a lot of healing coming back. So yeah, you've been able to finish your quest. Yes, you've been able to activate this lingering effect from Tavish. It's going to help you go the distance, hopefully, against the Warlock player. But we are seeing a little bit of corner turning happening. We've got that big import in play. We're drawing cards. We're healing up. And I do believe there's still another Spice Bread Baker to be drawn in the deck.
Yeah, so as long as Absolute Zero can just hold on a little bit longer. I mean, beforehand, we're looking at some of those card draws, and you're like, oh, this is rough. This is not going to get. I mean, he's got like 12 cards now. He
Is
must
this
be able to get something a little bit better off in the back end here. And of course, he's got a healthy board now.
Yeah,
At
this
least.
is a
He
lot
can
of
start doing a bit
damage.
more.
This
Yeah,
is
it's
that's a charged Ancient Krakenbane. That's a 5 damage stag charge. The Krakenbane's another 5 damage. And then if it's not lethal this turn, it's lethal next turn.
Yeah, you can see he's just playing the spells to continue refreshing that hero power and just keep shooting. That's actually nuts what this is able to do there. As you can see as well, has the Wild Seeds in play as well. That's going to be getting a little bit stronger as time goes on. And of course, a little bit of clear. Another refresh of the hero power, throws it out there for a hit. It's free! It's just, oh my god.
So understanding again, obviously, if you can't win the game this turn, it's better to set up those Wild Seeds for a future turn than it is to try and put your opponent on 2 or whatever, in most cases, right? Against Warlock, because they do so much self-damage, sometimes it does restrict their options to lower their health total on their turn, but in this case, I agree with what JJ is doing. Gonna try and hope to fall over the line. Aralon has still been in hand this whole time, and it seems like a card that is really, you have to kind of wait for a very specific board state to want to play it, which is surprising to me. I thought this would just be the thing that you slam down on turn 5 every game because it sort of sets up that value, quite a lot of it immediately, but both Hunter Death players we've seen so far holding onto this card for the right moment.
Well, as you can see here, Absolute Zero down to 6 now, life and that sort of thing. Like you said, JJ has a few options with that next turn coming around. I'd love to see Absolute Zero get a little bit of extra life back into it. It's really thinking through the sequence before coming into it. Looks like it's going to be the Tamsin Black already coming into play there. Let's see if it comes into it. No, will be another Fiendish Circle there to summon a few extra imps off the back of that side there. We'll now give this Death Rattle here to give a little bit of extra play into it. The Naval Mine seems to be that choice here. So he's looking for some big damage the next turn, but can he survive the next turn is the real question.
Yeah, I mean, I like the combo being set up here with the Naval Mines. We already saw the potency of it, but
he can't survive.
Yeah.
He's got the he's hoping that the ancient Krakenbane's not there.
I mean, with that many cards in your opponent's hand, it's hard to imagine a set of cards that isn't lethal. With that, the extra damage out of that the quest effect is ridiculous. Like the Tavish ability, when you already have a 0 cost hero power, just brutal stuff. And I love that Hunter deck. JJ really showing up with a very cool, innovative set of decks, and now going to be moving onto the Warlock list, which is pretty much a mirror. It's not the exact same set of cards, but it is a very similar strategy.
Yeah, I think it's now going to really who decides what's going to be the best operation of that Warlock deck in the right sequences. Of course, a little bit of luck always comes into it. You could tell Absolute Zero was sort of just sitting there going like, "Hey, I've got a huge combo here. I can do some real damage. All I need is one more turn, just one more turn." But of course, JJ just holding on to that Krakenbane for the right moment to get that initial lethal. Was really hoping that maybe he didn't have that. Again, this is probably one of the weaknesses of Prince Renathal. You've got extra 10 cards that you could possibly draw from. You might not have that Krakenbane in hand there, which means that maybe, Absolute Zero survives that extra 1 turn, which means he does get that initial combo off that he's managed to build into play. So, a little bit of extras there. Looks like it's going to be that Warlock mirror coming into it as well. Absolute Zero wants to be able to actually win with that Warlock deck and then move to what's going to be his more powerful Skeleton Mage. Hopefully. But again, we haven't seen the Skeleton Mage get played there. Of course, like you said, very overpowered deck, or it looks to be an overpowered deck at the moment. We'll have to wait and see because the meta has not settled down. There's so much play, of course, not just in this tournament, but across the world that's happening at the moment.
In particular, I feel like the Skeleton Mage deck is kind of like this Warlock deck, this Handlock deck, but stronger. Like they have very similar game plans where they sort of have these minions that control the early game, and then like later on they contribute to a winning combo. But from seeing the results this Mage deck's been putting up, you suspect that it has a more powerful finish. It has better burst damage, or at least it's easier to set up. Like we saw, it's not like the Warlock deck can't just explode a million Death Rattles and kill you from very high life totals, but it takes a long time to draw all the cards and set it up, right? We saw that it took too long, even against a kind of, relatively leisurely paced Hunter finish. So that I would worry if JJ drops this game that we might see them struggle against Absolute Zero's final deck, but JJ is luckily enough, 1 game away from victory, so having set yourself up in this position, you may not even have to play against that mage.
Well, that's the hope here now for JJ. Just wants to be able to get this win off here. Both these players just happy to tap away at this moment in time. They're
Yeah, classic
slowly moving
Warlock
down
mirror
there.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tap. You tap. No,
Yeah,
it
well,
looks like another tap there. And this is the
okay.
thing that's also the advantage of Absolute Zero going second with this Warlock play. It was able to get the coin, an extra card in hand just for free, which means this Null gets to jump in immediately off the back then there as well as he can. He's going to actually just get cleared off by the Blood and Edge Thanos combo with the spell. That's going to allow him to at least not have to worry about that threat there. The Neville Mine will go down as well. A Grimoire of Sacrifice actually jump in there, just obviously cause a little bit of extra damage and provide him what's going to be a little bit different there. And as you can see, just happy to continue weakening away at each other, both back to 26 life.
Yeah, I believe that copy of Blood Mage Thanos is the one card different between these two lists. JJ is playing an Absolute Zero is playing a second Smothering Starfish instead. So it's always fun when the one tech card you've got over your opponent does something like that in hand, sets up a trade. And JJ has that Smothering Starfish in hand, so not going to, feel the lack of the second copy, although just runs it out, which is really interesting. I was about to try and sort of, let's go into the nitty-gritty of mirrors, because mirror match is always different and interesting, and I would have thought Smothering Starfish would be pretty great tech in this mirror, right? Unless your opponent executes the whole combo on one turn with Tamsin's Phylactery, you can silence all of those imps that you have in play when you try to put the Naval Mine Death Rattle on them, and that just cuts off your opponent's biggest sort of game-winning play.
Yeah, well, Absolute Zero as well is very quickly going to be throwing down their own Dreadlich Tamsin as well, basically change up that hero power. Obviously get a little bit of changes here as well. That's going to allow the Mithril Rod to get a little bit of extra draw in as well, and things ramping up very quickly for Absolute Zero, who might be able to start really turning the corner ahead of JJ here. They don't actually catch up with in terms of reaching those win conditions.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I definitely agree with the early Dreadlich Tamsin, right? I mean, JJ mulliganed in a way where you kept Dreadlich Tamsin. Like, you don't always keep a 6 cost in your opener over the other cards, but JJ understanding that, you want to start progressing this part of your plan earlier than your opponent in this matchup. And yet JJ elected to play out those early minions on turn 6 instead of immediately deploying Dreadlich, and it's Absolute Zero who draws into it and gets that alternative hero power online first. Now, granted, both of them now in their Dreadlich form going to be shuffling those imps into the deck, and you're going to see just a really clogged board from now on. Lots and lots of 3/3 imps spawning. Obviously, both of these decks are equally well equipped with board clear to mop up opposing boards.
There. I wonder if they're gonna make it what's the word? So we got an entitled customer, but what would it be like? An uncaring manager, as a response card to the you
yeah. You have
down, and then what happens? Uncaring manager respawns all the minions.
You would have conniving retail or conniving clerk, and their power is it's like Death Rattle summon the manager, because oh you want to see my manager, and they pull back a big curtain. Their manager is Cthulhu. It's a huge demon eye.
Yes.
That would be the best World of Warcraft version of that joke, I think. So it's you can now see the manager, but the manager also sees you, and just eye lasers your opponent.
Oh, I would be totally
next
down
expansion.
For that.
Wizard, hire me as a card designer.
Exactly, we've got this. Both of us know exactly what's
untapped
here.
Talent here.
Oh, brilliant on that sense.
Man.
Well, that being said here, they're still using their Rune Mithril Rods here, continuing to just obviously clear things away. As you can see, we'll obviously sacrifice those bombs as well to get a bit of extra damage out. And I think it's just them really looking at this moment in time to play it out. Everything's... I don't see who's got a major advantage at the moment in time there. Absolute Zero obviously started Tamsin a little bit earlier here, but to be fair, relatively same life totals. I think a little bit more of an advantage at this moment in time for JJ, but... when everything's said and done there, I reckon that whoever gets their combo first and is able to complete it will be looking a little bit stronger here. And as we can see here, it does summon a number of imps, so a little bit of preparation might be in play here for Absolute Zero.
We've seen this sort of thing before, right? Because we saw either Warlock and Demon Hunter decks the last time we were playing this were both of this archetype, right? This kind of combo deck where you stall until turn 8, 9, 10 more, and then you have some overwhelmingly powerful finishing play, but there's a lot of moving parts to try and set up. And when two of these decks clash, because they're so defensively oriented, neither of them really, like, you saw them both in the early game. They tried throwing out a null, they tested their opponent, and then after that early window, like, you basically have no hope of killing your opponent prior to the combo coming online. So then it's just both players and we as commentators have to think, what are the cards that are relevant in the super late game? What's it going to take? Like, at what point can you create a combo that kills your opponent from 30 life? Can you stop your? How do you stop your opponent doing that? And all I can say is, like, yeah, here it is.
Gonna throw that across.
Yeah, that's a lot of bombs.
Yeah, here comes the damage here. I think this is literally for, like, okay, cool. Like, I can do a lot of damage right here and out. Yeah. Like, a lot of damage here. Not really going to have lethal off the back end here, but I can definitely put my opponent down quite a fair bit.
It's an interesting choice from Absolute Zero. I wonder if they felt threatened that JJ was going to combo off, like, lethally on this turn, because to me, the only two reasons you would go for a non-lethal version of the combo against an opponent, because JJ hasn't played either Spice Bread Baker yet. So I guess you're testing, like, hey, have you drawn these? But we can see JJ has, so you can heal back up a lot. And you spent a lot of resources to fire off that salvo. You don't really have an immediate follow-up looking at the hand of Absolute Zero. Like, you have to be either assuming that it's now or never because you're about to die, or you feel as though, you know, you're forcing your opponent to heal now instead of developing their own combo in an turn or two. You're going to go for a second barrage, but I'll be honest, I'm not as familiar with this deck, obviously, as these players, but I don't see more damage in Absolute Zero's hand.
Oh, look at all these Fell Riches coming into play here as well. That impending catastrophe really giving a little bit of extra as well. As you can see, there's that Rumifera Rod continuing to make all of the spells cheaper. We'll throw down that Spice Bread Breakers as well now as well to get that extra HP back into the mix. So 9 plus 8.
All the way back
play here. And we'll be draining one of those imps as well back up to 23. So I think Absolute Zero does have another combination available. Can do it one more time. But again, that idea of, like, okay, you've played both of your Spice Bakers. Can I do this one more time? Because he did use, like you said, use a lot in that arsenal to finish this one off. Another thing that's going to be nice there is he does have those smothering fish there, but I think the reason why, and we can see why JJ used it earlier now, he said, you know what, I don't think that I'm going to have too many opportunities to use it, because he's been holding on to those smothering fishes this entire time. And still has yet to drop him onto the board there because he's waiting for, like, a big moment for it to happen. The entitled customer might be clearing the board though for this time being.
The Starfishes, you'll see, we'll see at least one played here. The thing about this card is, against this deck, is the card itself is rarely going to do anything. It's the threat of being able to play the card, because if you show your opponent, I have played all the Starfishes in my deck, then maybe they can consider setting up a 2-turn version of the combo, right? They can fill up the board, maybe cast one Tamsin's Phylactery, but if it's not lethal, maybe they just leave all those imps there. Because what are you going to do? Kill them? And then if you let them have a second turn, then maybe you can set up a true 30 damage kill. But if your opponent hasn't played all their Starfishes, then it's a huge risk to do that. Unfortunately, JJ has, with Tamsin, got access to the second cast of that Phylactery, and that is how you deal 30 damage at once. Absolute Zero was not able to find that, and as we saw, the non-lethal version of this combo just not enough against the same deck where you know how much healing potential it has. JJ able to eventually then sort of comfortably mop things up because you're no longer afraid, what if this is my last turn? Your opponent fired their shot.
Exactly. At that point, you can see, it's like, oh, I mean, imagine probably feeling that side as JJ. You're like, oh, okay, I'm seeing it come down. He's using the mind. Everything's there, but it's not going to be the exact same amount of damage that I thought it come through. Does survive through in the end. And I think you can tell with Absolute Zero, he's like, all right, I need to, like, ramp up again, get enough opportunity. He's going to fire his shot. I need to be as high health as possible in order to make sure I can survive this. But like you mentioned before, all of the combinations came into play there for JJ, was able to put in a perfect OTK and was able to find that kill in the back end of it as well.
In defense of that play, right? Like, you left JJ on 3 life. You know that, like, their best board clear spell for the Rift Imps is Hellfire, which would kill you at that point. So, and the next turn you spawn a bunch of imps, right? So it really is just this calculated decision of how likely am I to win by just waiting and waiting and waiting until I have the combo. I suspect my opponent has the combo. Maybe it's worth it putting them to exactly 3, and then I know I'm probably highly likely to have some 3/3 imps next turn. They might just not have the answer for that. Unfortunately, with the 2 Bakers in hand and that lucky chain of imps to reload the hand completely and the board, that was kind of the big swinging moment. JJ just answering that challenge, with full marks.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't put it any better myself, Bard. Just quickly, do want to also just note, guys, that this competition is, of course, sponsored by Macca's. So if you want to jump in there, see all of the, or catch all of the I'm loving it moments, you will be able to see them at the end of the show on Twitter. And of course, what else is out there is Mace Internet Mobile as well. Throw in there for a chance to win 2 card packs valued at $3.95. Hashtag Let's Be Mate into the chat and let us know everything that's happening off that back end. That being said, guys, we do need to prep the next part of the competition. So please do not go anywhere while we do have that more Hearthstone action coming right up. And we have returned to the ANZ Hearthstone Open presented by Blizzard and AEL. If you're just joining us now, we are now in the upper bracket final where, very fittingly, the number 1 and number 2 seeds will be facing off against each other. That's going to be Home Master up against JJ. And now, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm pretty sure this is a grudge match as well, because the last time these guys faced off, and it was, the East Conference, this scenario, Home Master did come out on top.
Yeah, I wasn't going to write off any of the other players in today's event because, a lot of them are very competitive themselves, but these two have established a pedigree from our previous season of Hearthstone Open here at AEL. So it makes sense that they would be the ones once again showing just a little bit of extra skill and finesse and luck, because you got to be a powerful wizard sometimes. But yeah, they're making it through. Also interesting to see similarities in their lineups. Homemaster also repping not the same deck, but a similar approach to the Hunter here. It's going to be that Quest Hunter with the 40 card deck, running that Prince Renathal. And yeah, it's obviously very powerful to have that. It seems like an emerging archetype, because Homemaster isn't just playing it, he also banned JJ's version of the deck. So
that's right. But on the flip side, JJ banned away what seemed to be a minor rogue, basically allows those control decks. It doesn't really give those control decks the opportunity to get up and running. So I think that was sort of our gamble on that there. Also, the other aspect is, hey, that mine rogue doesn't really seem to be seeing that much play across the metas at the moment as well. So perhaps maybe an unknown quantity that JJ just didn't want to deal with. Said, get away with that in that scenario here. But of course, both these decks will be running that Prince Renathal. So as you can see there, they've got that 40 life coming into the play and into that mix. And it's really just going to be a matter of who ends up playing this a bit better. I'm actually excited to see the Druid get played as well, because of course, this deck here has a number of big play out cards that can come into it. Alex Streiser, the Lifebinder, Malagos, the Spellweaver, Lokala, the Ice Lord, Raid Boss, Anixia, Inside, and Nathir. It's really coming through and amping up some amazing late game options here for JJ. So I'm really excited to see how this matchup plays out.
Amazing late game options for sure, and this is a clash of two different approaches to Prince Renathal, right? Like the JJ deck is the one I expected, where you just play every big, expensive, powerful card that doesn't really need a specific combo or synergy to work. Homemaster, on the other hand, is like, I'm playing every sort of just like cheap, reasonable damage spell, and I'm going to burn you out. Now, on the one hand, JJ seems to have the edge because, well, I've got 40 life as well, so it's going to take a lot more effort to reduce me to 0, but I think Homemaster, in that case, even if you're worried about running out of damage, because your opponent's deck is also going to take a while to win the game, maybe you lean more on the quest. Maybe you try and build up as much of a hand of cheap spells as possible, and you can do a quick rapid-fire combo turn. And you can see JJ clearly feels the pressure, just running out that Amalgam the turn before, just trying to put any sort of body on the board, not just trusting in those 10 costs and I'll have the late game. You want to be pressuring this Hunter deck early on.
Yeah, well, we're throwing out those barb nets there to continue pushing through that quest there, getting through to that next little part there. Obviously does have that hero power to finish off what's going to be that 3-4 body as well into the board there. So a nice little play there with the spell, followed through the fact that now it's not going to hit the hero. I can actually target through the minion as well. Now we can see they're going to be flipping back over towards JJ's side there, who's got an option between the Prize Fury, the Natural Causes, or the Living Seed there. And it's really just going to be thinking, okay, cool, what can I actually do with this play here? Probably not the Natural Clause there, and it is going to be that Living Seed.
Yeah, I think that's the play I would have chosen as well. So I'm glad to see JJ choosing it, because it means I'm smart. I assume JJ's choice is going to be correct here. But it's the rubric here has got to be right. Like, whichever is the best value, the best long-term play. Like, dealing 2 damage now is great, but when both players have 40 life and both players are going to hit a certain point where they're just throwing around overwhelmingly powerful cards or combinations thereof. In Homemaster's case, you really want to be like, okay, well, I can draw a powerful beast and have it discounted. That's more likely to stick to the board and get in a lot of damage and really change the course of this game. And you need to be, mustering as much value as possible. If you're JJ, you have to get Homemaster off the plan of shooting you in the face and onto burning resources, killing your minions.
Yeah, I agree with that sense as well. As you can see, there does also throw that Jerry Ray Carpenter to split out one of those spells as well. You get a little bit of an extra into the mix. The other thing as well for Home Master, there he does have that Dormant Fox Spirit Wild Seed into play there as well. So that will come on board now as well. It does have that rush. So the question is, do you go to face and you clear the board? Looks like he's going to use that piercing shot to clear the board, of course, for quest purposes. Do a little bit of extra damage here immediately towards the face of JJ, while at the same time is going to leave that Fox Spirit alive to continue also attacking the face.
Yeah, it's hard to tell who's ahead right now. Like, again, it's so hard when both decks have 40 life, when Home Master is like sort of simultaneously the deck that's all about pressuring life, but you also have this combo plan late game that seems like it's worth a lot. It's going to be, there's pressure on JJ to keep the tempo up as well. Both of these decks just kind of like swinging at each other in the dark almost, and I'm sure the players have a somewhat better idea of how to approach the matchup, but that's also kind of just how it is in the early part of an expansion. You're still feeling these things out, and maybe you have a completely different idea to your opponent about how this matchup should go. This is going to be the proof of who has a better read.
Well, it does play that Park Panther just to get a little bit of extra pressure onto the board there. It does give that 3 attack, of course, to JJ, who's able to then put that damage into the face. And looks like he's saying, you know what, I can't have you doing damage. I'm the one that's going to be doing this. So does throw that right back in there, and that means the quest line has been completed. Yeah. Especially with you saying, on that side of things there. And we'll obviously get that Tavish Master Marksman into the play as well. So he actually has that 7/7 body to play in the next turn.
It's really impressive. Like, it just shows you what a good okay, that's, I mean, obviously that's an impressive play in and of itself. No explosive trap available right now to mop all that stuff up. But yeah, with Tavish in play now, the steady shot being able to go anywhere, costing nothing. Like, the power is so great in this quest line. This Defend the Dwarven Districts is just nutty, and you can already see the combo coming out because you weren't under pressure, because you're able to save the coin, you're able to save all these cheap spells. Now they all just become +2 damage for nothing. It's insanely powerful, and I can see why Home Master would ban this deck out on the other side of things. You want to be the only one wielding this kind of magic, and it's going to be up to JJ now. Like, okay, you're not dead this turn, but how many more turns can you really hope to have?
Well, we do have the Celestial Alignment coming into play here as well, which is going to be nice in that sense. They're setting everything to 0. That does allow him to like go through and put those hits there, puts him down to 1 HP as well, and that just means like next turn, hey, can't really do too much about it as well. We'll put out a little bit of extra damage on that side there. That Celestial Alignment sort of buys a bit of time for JJ to continue ramping up.
Yeah, on the one hand, you make all of Home Master spells basically able to be played this turn, but there's a good possibility Home Master would have been able to play out the whole rest of his hand this turn anyway. So JJ also, in his deck's own idiosyncratic way, throwing down that ultimatum, and you say, okay, well, now you can play whatever card you like, but I'm going to play whatever card I like, and hey, guess what? Mine are a lot better, and I have this Nourish, and I have this Miracle Growth. Could be the start of a turnaround. Hasn't found a way to heal yet, which is very scary, but this is the part of the game where the Druid deck is starting to see its value.
Yeah, you can see now the Enrich coming into play as well. It gets another 3 cards into the mix. Wild Bloom Seedsman as well continues to just ramp up and is saying, yeah, I've sent you back down to 1, but now I'm pretty much ramping myself immediately right on back up to all of my cards. That Wild Growth coming into play as well. The Earthen Scales as well. As you can see, some big, strong minions coming into play here as well. Home Master really needs to find some real quick damage there. That armor, 19, 12. I feel like you said, that corner has well and truly been turned off the back of playing this. The Raid Boss Onyxia also coming down as well.
that was
just such a huge hand to deal with, JJ.
One turn.
Absolutely exploding with 1 turn.
Yeah. That's I was still that whole time like, it's all right. It's just a bit. Okay, they've ramped a bit. Oh, okay, well, that Kelp Creeper, that's a big taunt, but Home Master's deck doesn't really have to attack. You can just push direct damage. The 19 armor, though, that's probably gonna do it. That's worth a lot of Hunter spells.
It's like, I've got a lot. He's got a lot of secrets now. And like Home Master's the one saying, all right, now I need to find a way to stay alive here as well. I mean, he's got the Explosive Trap, but I mean, that's really only gonna just clear away those weaker minions. So Freezing Trap will send back a Whelp. Who cares? He's got another Whelp that he can also throw into the mix as well. He's gonna use it to actually clear away here. The Explosive Trap, he knows that means he can actually jump in. It's going to at least do some damage. It's going to clear 1 Whelp away. Who cares on that one there as well. But look at how big these minions are. 10-8, 8-8. Big damage coming out here as well right off the back. Home Master down to 6 HP as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Summons
he's just
Topior, the Shrub Dragon, and even having that Whelp return to hand just means that you can replay it and reapply a Nixia's immunity, where instead of having your Whelps completely board wiped. So, yeah, that's something. I'm assuming that the Whelps from, even though they're called Whelpagazor, I'm assuming those also give Nixia immunity to Whelps.
exactly. I would say that the case. So Home Master knows that probably this is done. I don't think he's got anywhere near enough damage.
No.
Looking at what he's got here, Dumbledore Bunker. I mean, nothing.
It's
He's got
something,
nothing.
but-
He's got. I mean, he's got. It's something like you said, but it's.
The problem is that
needs
you
so
are
much
dead.
more.
Yeah, like...
you just... What were we gonna say, Bud?
Sorry, all I was gonna say was, I wasn't sure, right? Because Homemaster felt like he was playing confidently for the whole game, just kind of holding up those resources for the big combo turn. And I thought, gee, maybe the direct damage is just good enough. And, you know, just having a big board of minions or just gaining 19 armor may not have been enough for JJ because of how much damage the Hunter deck can produce. But the combination of the two, right? You could just see there's no way to deal that much damage in like the turn or two you have. All these gigantic minions just overwhelm you. And I'm honestly reassured by that. I think it's reasonable to say the Ramp Druid should win the game at that point.
Absolutely. I was initially, you could see JJ knew exactly what he was doing when he picked up that Celestial Alignment, knew that he had all the combinations that he wanted to, could immediately ramp back up to that 10 mana, and just the play afterwards was huge. The fact that he could bring up that much of an arsenal in terms of just minions on the board and then restore back so much effective HP in life total, that was just very rough for Home Master to deal with. But of course, that means that the Druid now has been retired. It's done its job and it's won its initial match there. Now we do have the Hunters coming into play here. JJ needs to win now with the Warlock, which again is going to be that Mine Warlock that we've been seeing play before as well. Just looking for that big combination for the winner here. Home Master will be trying again with that Hunter.
Yeah, and this is, again, it's always interesting to see how do these decks have to play differently when they're up against a sort of a similarly slower combo finish kind of deck than a kind of board pressuring aggro deck, right? And which deck has better tools, because there does tend to be a gap in being able to transition a lot of their cards towards comboing off faster when not pressured, as opposed to a deck like this Warlock, which, as we saw in the previous match, cards like Hellfire, they're never really going to let you set up that 30 damage mine combo better. So especially against an opponent that can heal, where doing a partial combo isn't as valuable, this can leave you behind in the matchup. However, against this Hunter deck, I'm interested to see, yes, you have to do 40 damage, but you know Home Master probably not going to be regenerating a lot, so maybe there's more room for the kind of play we saw, in the prior set of matches, where you just sort of do a small mine combo and try to let the imps finish your opponent off. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I do feel like Home Master is confident in this matchup, just because, as we saw, you can just do a lot of damage and you don't have to worry about keeping a board alive.
Yeah, the other thing that we sort of identified as well that's nice about this Quest Hunter variant, or this Quest Hunter archetype, is the fact that even though he's used those Wild Spirits now as well, there is still going to be less minions on board as well for the Warlock to suck that life back and stay alive against all the spells that he's going to be throwing out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Home Master is going to be very quickly throwing out all of these Wild Seeds as well, so he's quite happy just to let them ramp up once again and give options for JJ, who might not actually have the available clear. He does have that Hellfire at this moment in time there, so you can just throw that out to do that extra damage. But at the end of the day, I think Home Master's not too concerned if he does use that to clear away, because of course he's going to be doing damage to himself, damage to the characters onto the board there, and Home Master's just happy to let his spells continue to ramp up that quest.
Yeah, finds the Goldshire Null, which is a great find here, even returning an Imp to hand off that Frost Trap to be able to effectively discount the Null. And I really like how JJ's playing as well. I don't know whether it's necessarily like giving him a winning position in the matchup, but just that decision to play those imps out early, right? Like, the imps are sort of a late game resource for this deck oftentimes. They're part of your winning combo, or at least part of a card draw combo with Impending Doom. But we talked about the sort of tempo pressure that this Wild Seed mechanic puts on you. And also the sort of more matchup-based tempo pressure of, you understand that Home Master can probably combo off and kill you with Tavish a few turns before you'll have that full mine setup ready, especially to reduce them from 40 life. So JJ makes the decision to get on board first, and by having those 1/1 imps around, you either force Home Master to spend resources to remove them, or you give yourself the ability to clear a larger board because you'll have these 1/1s ready in play when those Wild Seeds pop out. or at the very least, you can get some chip damage in, so when you do go for the combo as the Warlock, you don't need to do the full 40 damage. And it's just recognizing, not just autopiloting it. Oh, great, I don't need to worry too much about these minions. I'm just going to try and draw cards. I'm going to life tap, life tap, life tap. I'm going to find all my combo pieces. But how can you get more juice out of the early game when you aren't, being assailed by a ton of Murlocs or whatever?
A lot of options here for both of these players in terms of that there. Like you said, Home Master JJ really need to think through that. JJ specifically needs to really think through what's going to be that initial play. Now, when I look at that piercing shot will be enough to clear out the board, also do a little bit of spill damage onto JJ, as you can see, continuing to push that quest line that little bit further as well, and does throw down another Wild Dormant Seed as well, just off the back of that. So, Home Master has a lot in terms of this, in terms of what seems to be a total life total at this moment in time. There is low on the gas, if I really had to say everything, or the juice at this moment in time, with only having those 2 cards. So, would love to get a little bit of extra card draw into this. So, this might give JJ enough time to sort of relax, actually use those life taps effectively. We'll use that Nevermind for the time being as well, probably just to get a little bit of clear onto that in the next turn.
I mean, this is I think this has as much to say about the kind of luck of the draw for Home Master this time, compared to as much as it does about the player by the player. But it's turn 6 in the last game. This is the turn that we saw like Tavish appear on the battlefield, or at least be in hand. We're still finishing like the second part of the quest. We're not even up to the part of the quest that unlocks Tavish. So that extra card draw spell that we found Home Master, very valuable, but not being able to use to its maximum either, because the 6-cost legendary, unfortunately, Beast Stalker Tavish is in your hand. So that's sort of taking up one of the card draw slots you could have gotten with Furious Howl. And JJ must be, other than being on 9 life, feeling pretty good. If you can figure out a way to heal up enough with Spiced Bread Baker here to survive the next couple of turns, I feel like you're in quite a good position. Like, you can't really ask for much more than Home Master's hand being empty. You don't have that damage potential represented even when the quest is completed, and who can say how long it'll be before that happens, because you'll have to play this Barak, Kodo Bane, or Beastalker Tavish to try and draw some damage spells to get that done.
Well, you can see as well, Jay just beginning to weaken away at Home Master's life, finally down to 35 as well. That Spice Bread Baker comes out to get that much needed restore of health back up to 19 as well. And here we go, we get a little bit of card draw finally for Home Master in terms of what he wants. Ice traps are coming down, secrets are coming into play here, finally continuing to push that quest line that little bit further, and now it has some juice into that next game. But of course, this is still valuable time that JJ needs to really continue to ramp up as well and get some HP back and get at least a few more of those pieces into play to really finish off this and finally get that combo, because he does have the phylactery in hand as well. So he's got most of the pieces available here now as well, but I think just needs a little bit more until that puzzle is completed.
Yeah, incredibly tense moment here. Nice choice to use the Mortal Coil. Reads that Ice Trap perfectly. It was such a good Ice Trap as well, because this is the key turn. If I think this next turn is Home Master's best chance to find lethal, and both players know it. So trying to put some sort of extra tempo hit on your opponent, but the Ice Trap only ends up costing JJ 2 mana, right? Like 1 to play that coil the first time, 1 from the tax. It's the minimum amount that it could hit you for. And unfortunately, this Impending Catastrophe comes with no imps in play, desperately trying to find some healing. Finds Dreadlich Tamsin. It's not going to be enough, right?
Yeah, it's nice, but I don't think it's really going to be there. So now it's come back towards Home Master. He's got those barb nets. He's got a lot of upfront damage. He's just got lethal
power. Yeah, Home Master threads the needle, right? You found the turn. JJ was starting to turn the corner, you could tell, and did a great job of forcing Home Master to empty the hand early on. But those couple of draw spells, even though they didn't draw you into sort of damage spells to immediately flip things, JJ only finding the 1 Spice Bread Baker, not being able to heal otherwise, as you mentioned, in part because of the lack of targets for drains or the lack of drains drawn, decides that matchup ultimately.
Yeah, and you could tell JJ was digging, like you said. The Impending Catastrophe was there just to sort of get a little bit of card draw in. Maybe I can find a solution to my lack of health pool at this moment in time, or maybe even perhaps draw into what's going to be my big combo. But it still was going to be the fact that he didn't have enough mana anyway to implement it. He really just needed to get a little bit of extra HP into that back pocket, and unfortunately just was unable to find it that there. So that does mean that Home Master will remain alive going into the next match. Having just a quick look now to see what's available there. So Home Master now has to play what's going to be his Warlock, which again is going to be pretty similar, basically pretty similar, both these decks there. It's going to be a very, very clear mirror between the two. No changes actually between them. Just want to look to see what they've got that's a little bit different there. in terms of that play there, looks really close. There is some small differences between the two, but I can't find them just at this moment in time. But
Yeah.
relatively, it's just like 1 or 2 cards out at this moment in time.
The point is that, like, it's interesting because if you look at the overall deck list registered for the event, almost everyone's got a Warlock, but it's like a 50-50 split between this Handlock and the new Imp Warlock.
Yep.
But it just so happens that the players in our upper bracket, the ones we've been watching in the game so far, the decks that we've seen, they have been this Warlock. So it's not that, oh, where's that Imp Warlock deck that we were saying so much about? Well, it was banned in the first game, and these two players have chosen to go for whatever reason with this Handlock. It's curious, right? I wonder whether this will persist in future weeks, but it seems to me like the Hand Warlock deck is a little soft to these combo decks, right? We see both players having to ban either the spell-based Hunter deck or the Mine Rogue that seems to be a similar sort of not really having a board, I'm just going to deal you direct damage sort of deck. And if those are popular in the meta, maybe that's part of what's driving this shift towards a more board-focused early game Zoo Warlock strategy.
Mm-hmm. While we've been going through that, I did find a difference between these two decks there as well. So JJ is running a Smothering Starfish, so a nice little tech, of course, to allow him to sort of just clear away options from his opponent. Whereas on the flip side, there's going to be a Queen Ashara here for Home Master. So having a little bit of extra oomph into that late game when you do have the ability to pick up that Ancient Relic or choose an Ancient Relic.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see, like, okay, I wouldn't have said this is a deck where you need more, like, gas in the late game, but who knows why Home Master has chosen this tech. These two players are both, like, I think we remember from last year, even very assured deck builders. They're not, they don't feel the need to follow, whatever the highest win percentage deck is on the leaderboards. They trust their own instincts, and in a small field tournament like this, those innovations are often what sets you apart, especially as we get to the finals, where, like, more and more everyone is a very accomplished player. Everyone has access to the best decks if they want. It's whoever can take things a step further, and we see already in our first qualifier, the season qualifier, Home Master and JJ pushing the boundaries.
Or a very early Spice Breaker as well. A very early Spice Bread Baker as well. They're just saying, hey, I want to remain healthy and make sure I'm safe on that side there as well. Home Master, of course, wants to get those mines out as fast as possible. Does also throw down that Ruined Mithril Rod there. So really is beginning to find all the pieces of the puzzle they need, because of course they want to discount most of their cards to make sure that they can follow through those combinations. JJ also follows through with their own, and of course that coin is still going to be available, I believe, for the time being. Actually, no, the coin has been used, never mind me, so that does mean that these guys are on relatively even footing here. No major tempo plays there. I guess that was literally Home Master using his tempo early to get that early damage out.
There's not, unlike the Hunter deck, this deck doesn't really gain any sort of triggers or valuable things off the coin. It is an extra card in hand for stuff like Goldshire Knoll or the Spice Bread Baker, but this deck does not have trouble filling its hand. So in the mirror match, as we saw last time, these two are even more similar lists. I think the priorities are clear. You want to be advancing your game plan at all costs, which is why both players stopped everything to play Ruined Mithril Rod as soon as they possibly could, or even coined it out. But after that, once you've sort of started setting up the combo, there's only so much you can do. You need to draw all the cards first. You need to wait until you have enough mana, even with the discount from the rod. So at this point, it's also just about, like, do you gamble? Like, which resources do you try and spend early on? What's going to be the most effective at sort of forcing your opponent to use their cards in a suboptimal way, or in putting chip damage on them that maybe they don't want to or can't heal immediately to try and set up a sneakier, earlier lethal. But you can see JJ already pressured into using one of the Spice Bread Bakers, but then simultaneously you could argue that Home Master wasted resources doing that damage in the first place. So that's what makes these sorts of mirror matches, especially for a deck like this that has a very deliberate game plan. When you're playing against yourself, basically, it really completely changes how you use all your cards.
Yeah, absolutely. You can really see as well, JJ was looking to make sure he could actually find all the combinations that he needs off that back end. Like, for example, we can see the Phylactery is going to be in hand for Home Master, but at this moment in time, actually is now going to be there as well for JJ. But the last time he used those Imp combination with the Impending Catastrophe to draw out quite a fair amount of cards, and then managed to actually pick up that Phylactery as well. So you can see they're all digging at this moment in time to get the pieces that they need for it as well. And I think that was a really nice play there coming off the back end. The Red Lich Tasman also in hand for JJ here as well, so it just makes sense for him maybe to have to throw that down right now and continue pushing towards what's going to be that end game.
I would never rule out a player of Home Master's caliber, and especially in a matchup that is this swingy, right? Like, both players easily with the power to kill each other from maximum health in one turn, but you do need certain things to go in your favor in order to create that possibility, and JJ just sort of seems to have more of that going on right now, further along the flowchart. In particular, the fact that both players have Mithril Rods, but you remember, obviously, they're not discounting the same cards. JJ discounting both the Phylactery and Tamsin Roam means that you're going to be much more quickly able to reach the point where you just run out the whole combo in one unstoppable turn. And now finding Dreadlich Tamsin means that once you're comfortable, obviously with the board that you had in play already, JJ, comfortable to just sort of continue running out minions and, get this Naval Mine into sort of the death pool for the purposes of the combo. But if you want, you can also be the first player to start filling the deck up with Rifts as sort of an additional free source of pressure.
Yeah, has a lot of options there coming into that mix as well. Isn't going to be playing that list just yet.
Oh, finds the other rod.
Oh,
wow.
that is actually
This is
really
scary for
unfortunate
Homemaster.
for Homemaster. A Drain Soul, not really what you want to have there. He's going to tap once again. Gets the Dreadlich Tamsin at least, so that's, a little bit of a push on the side there as well. It is going to be discounted, so he can drop that down if they want to. Has got a 0-cost null available as well for the time being, so it makes sense probably just throwing down that free value for the time being. But of course, as you can see when you look at the board here, it's going to be Homemaster, who's now down on life pool total, is thinking about perhaps playing that Spice Bread Baker first instead, just to get himself a little bit more healthier. I can see a number of options off the play here, but of course, if he uses that Spice Bread Baker, that Dreadlich Tamsin will have to wait until the next turn to get that one out.
The fact that, and again, right, we're at the start of this match, it seems like half the cards in each deck are valuable and half of them aren't, right? You only care about the stuff that lets you combo off faster, the stuff that JJ's doing with these rods in this sort of like exact alignment. The fact that JJ's been able to create a situation where Homemaster has to agonize over the sequencing of these cards tells you how ahead JJ is, right? Like, you're in a position where, like, not only does whether or not you heal yourself up out of 17 hit points where sort of like easy combo range, not only does that matter, but you also have to clear this board. You also have to try and develop your own combo and make sure you're not spending too many crucial resources that you'll need to do that, because you're trying to, in your mind, you'll probably feel like your opponent is ahead on that front as well. You need to catch up to them. It's all a lot to try and juggle for Homemaster. JJ holding all the cards, literally and figuratively, in this decisive Warlock Mirror, and it looks like this might even be the combo turn, Mendrix.
Yeah, it does immediately drop down that Tamsin Roan that we could see there before there. We'll use Tamsin's Phylactery to actually put on that effective death roll that we've seen.
This battle is over.
And yeah, even Homemaster knows it. Homemaster's like, oh, yep, he's got more than enough there as well. Another mine coming in as well, just to amp up that extra damage as well. And here comes the Hellfire, the combination of play there. You can tell Homemaster was really thinking through that last term as well, going, okay, how much life can I actually force myself out here as well? In the end, it's really just not going to matter. He's just sitting there hoping that, hey, does JJ have enough? JJ definitely did, and it looks like JJ will be forcing Homemaster down to that loser's bracket.
Yeah, absolutely brutal stuff. I do feel for Homemaster. That's always the worst kind of turn in a card game where you could tell, you just know from your instincts how far behind you are, and like you're choosing between two 1% chances to win options and a 2% chance to win option, and the overwhelming feeling is like, this is over, this sucks, I just want to concede, just go to the next game. Like you have to create hope for yourself as part of choosing which card to play, only to have it snuffed out almost inevitably, and that is how unfortunately it goes. But luckily it is double elim, so Homemaster not eliminated, does have a chance to bounce back, the number one seed in this event, right? So that's a bit of an upset.
Absolutely. I mean, well, it was against the number 2 seed, and I do remember when they did go up up against each other. It was very close, right? You could see that. I think it was JJ was really loving the OTKO Demon Hunter at the time combination with Il'gynoth, right? There was so many options that were like available in terms of what these players can do, and you can see they're already using it right now. That being said, though, we still have plenty of Hearthstone options available and action coming up as well. We're going to a quick break where we do have a quick look at the brackets to see what's going to be the next match. So please, guys, do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the ANZ Hearthstone Open presented by Blizzard and AEL. If you weren't watching before, we have finalized the upper bracket finals where JJ managed to overcome Homemaster, who was the #1 seed. I think the idea is we said it was a mini upset because it was the #2 seed that managed to actually take out.
You got to create a bit of spice somewhere.
Exactly, right? It's an upset, right? An upset is an upset. We have to take it where we can get it. But that does mean we are moving now towards the loser brackets here, where they continue to work their way up there. Of course, Homemaster will be waiting in the wings for who's going to be the winners up against, I believe it is Wet Goose versus Absolute Zero. These two have not versed each other into the tournament just yet, but we have had an opportunity to see Absolute Zero and I believe Wet Goose actually played out before. So it's going to be interesting to see what these two players do. And I believe you were mentioning they were bringing relatively same lineups in terms of their decks, but actually decided to ban away two different options instead of, hey, I want to ban away what we believe to be optimally the strongest deck right now, actually looking for comfortability in the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about so far, and we will continue to talk about, no doubt, because I love to talk about this stuff, how the metagame is evolving early on in the set. And that's not just about which cards and decks are getting played, but which cards and decks people are banning out, sort of what they think is sort of overpowered in the abstract, but even more so what matchups they like or don't like for their decks. And it's really interesting to me to see not only that both players have let this Skeleton Mage through, where in prior rounds they've seen it banned, but both players elected to ban a different deck out of effectively the same lineup from their opponent, which presumes, I would say, they have disagreed about what the biggest threat to them is. Like, okay, one of them maybe thinks that the Shaman deck is too hard to beat for mages, but not so Absolute Zero.
Yeah, I can agree in that sense as well. It's going to be the mage up against the warlock this time, and it's going to be that mine warlock that we've seen from time and time again as well. So I mean, I wonder if we're ever going to get an opportunity to actually see this imp warlock, right? Like, I wonder if there's going to be one of the scenarios where maybe the win rate needs to drop down to about 55% before we get an opportunity for us to actually see it, because it has just been banned away. But of course, players much more comfortable to go up against what's to be this mine warlock variant that's coming into play as well. The null or the null's going to be out very early, the naval mine as well, which of course we know is going to be an option for them to get that kill to obviously reach the next point in that. It's going to be happening for Wet Goose. There's a lot of different things happening here, but we haven't had a chance to see the Skeleton Mage get played down. We're going to have that Nightcloak Sentinel come into play immediately.
Yeah, so it's called Skeleton Mage because of Volatile Skeleton, right? I'm kind of on board with calling it Ping Mage, but it seems like more people are calling it Skeleton Mage. And sure enough, it does make a lot of these skeletons. What's more, it obviously is packing Kel'Thuzad, the new Kel'Thuzad, somewhere deep in the deck. And it basically is a one-card version of that whole elaborate combo the Warlock deck is trying to set up. You resummon all of your volatile skeletons that have died this game. If you oversummon them, they just immediately explode, and you're trying to, pretty much one-shot your opponent with that combustive engine you've got. In the meantime, you're a mage. You can easily control the board. Or if you don't need to control the board, you can chip in some direct damage to soften your opponent up and lower the threshold for the combo. So again, both of these decks, similar game plan, similar steps in their combo even, but, in the intricacies of how it plays out, I think I favor the mage on paper.
Yeah, I can imagine that being the case as well. I'll just let you know the Wicked Shipment has been drawn here. It's actually 2 in hand now as well for Wet Goose. He also has a Hellfire, a Touch of the Nathamrazine, and another Rune Mithril Rod in hand there with an impending catastrophe. So, in case you're wondering why I'm throwing that out there, I can see you guys can't actually see what's going to be in hand here at the moment for Wet Goose. So I'm just letting you know what he's got there. So a number of the pieces of the puzzle in place there, of course, to see that OTK combo come out where the mines just blow up your opponent. But of course, they're still waiting until has a few more other pieces. Still needs that Alacrity. That's not going to be in hand there as well. There needs that Tamsin Roam. So actually, as I say, that does pick up that Tamsin Roam. So it has most of the pieces there, but of course, we got to Absolute Zero is going to continue to freeze things up a little bit there, continue to ping out a number of damage as well, and we still have a lot of HP that Absolute Zero has that Wet Goose needs to push through. So needs possibly a few more pieces as well. Needs a few more imps to actually finish off that combination.
Yeah, Wet Goose is very glad, I'm sure, to find that Tams in there, because it's one thing to have the Mithril Rods and play them on curve and not feel punished for it. That's important. But, discounting Mortal Coils is not where it's at. you need to be
Absolutely.
discounting Tamsin, you need to be discounting the Phylactery. I think those are probably the two most important cards, and since they're legendary, you can't guarantee you'll draw them. So to dig in and find that Tamsin already before you've even exhausted the first of the two rods, very good stuff. And you can see Wet Goose. I mean, it's good that you're advancing your combo quickly, because these skeletons, they keep popping out. The Nightcloak Sanctums are just spawning more and more skeletons. You do get that kind of boss fight vibe, all the ads charging in, and they're sort of a more immediate source of threat than these 1/1 imps are out of Wet Goose. So sort of the combo is a slightly lower percentage of the threat. From the mage deck, there's sort of just a bunch of strong minions as well, and other little battle cry combos, right? We've got Brand Bronzebeard in hand here. There's lots of nasty things this deck can do with them, not least the Reckless Apprentice you see in hand, or the multicaster for card draw. Those are sort of your backup options. And Sir Finley the Sea Guide now presenting another sort of interesting choice for Absolute Zero. If you don't have access to your combo cards right away, do you feel like gambling with the bottom of your deck?
Exactly right. A lot of options here for Absolute Zero to really just flip the script, turn the corner, all the different, basically words we've been using this entire cast. We'll actually decide to actually play that gamble as well. So as you can see, he's just going to swap everything in right now as well. Continue to draw out. Gets a Cold Case, Deathborn, Wildfire, Reckless Apprentice, Arcane Intellect, so to draw there, the Mordress Fire Eye. So Absolute probably pretty happy with this in terms of the curve coming across there as well. And we'll drop down that Cold Case to continue to get more volatile skeletons into play here. So
yeah, absolutely.
Continue to push it a little bit further. The Wildfire as well. Oof, that is going to be very nice.
That's a very big hit off Finley, right? Like having drawing the Wildfire and the Mordresh Fire Eye that it basically enables is a very big deal for this deck. And having the Reckless Apprentice in hand, like you don't really need the board clear going on, but just the opportunity that if your opponent has those imps in play, you'll be able to basically immediately trigger or turn on Mordresh, right? Mordresh is as much the finishing combo of this deck as the whole volatile skeleton setup. Like, it's called Skeleton Mage because that's the unique part of the deck, but you can just get them with Mordresh Fire Eye as you would, a more common kind of mage finishing sequence. So we'll see how this goes. Deathborn also potentially a play here because the Warlock deck likes to put these imps in play, and it wouldn't surprise me if, Wektu sort of made more of an effort to mop up their own side of the board, right? Because both of these decks, it's kind of a liability to leave minions in play. You're not really going to kill your opponent off with them, but oh wow, Kel'Thuzad and Mordresh now both available for Absolute Zero. Only 5 skeletons to resummon makes it sort of seem like you want to sequence Mordresh first out of the two of them.
Yeah, I can agree on that. So we'll continue to summon more of those skeletons, of course, with those Nightcloak Sanctums. It's pretty scary moment here for Wet Goose there. Of course, he doesn't know that's a scary moment. He doesn't realize that Mordresh Fire Eye is in play that has that, the cause of the inhibitor as well. I mean, it's getting a bit clear. It has the Dreadlich Thames in there, which is nice there. Has got Impending Catastrophe. The Entitled Customer might be a good play here, just to sort of clear. Oh man, it's like
you gotta kind of advance your game plan pretty fast here. You gotta skip to the end of the book.
I think right now he's looking to skip. He doesn't.
I'm checking my watch.
As well.
It's 8 mana o'clock.
Let's see if is it enough there. Has he got it?
Tamsin, Phylactery. That's 8 triggers. Can you still? Yeah, you'll be able to Hellfire. So Hellfire is 3 damage, 16. That's not enough damage, right? Oh, it's 8 damage. Sorry, it's 8 damage per imp. I can't count.
Yes,
no, it's easily enough.
Damage.
The second Phylactery.
I was thinking it was 4 for a second then when you were saying that, but no, it definitely has more than enough here. Absolute Zero was definitely getting towards like close here as well. As you can see here now, hookups all that damage there. He goes, okay, cool, that's a lot of damage. He was able to deal down to 10, but of course, he had really mapped it out, and look at all of those bombs.
Yeah, so Absolute Zero there gets to turn 8, right? And I'm not sure how often or how plausible it is that you get a turn 8 kill with that deck, because turn 8 is 8 mana is the cost of Kel'Thuzad. It is the cost of your other finisher, but not able to find lethal on that turn. Couldn't get enough chip damage in, couldn't get enough skeletons to die. And unfortunately, taking that extra turn, that's one turn too many. Really nice job finding those discounts from the Rune Mithril Rods to ensure the fastest possible Warlock combo and win that foot race to victory.
And it really was off the back of that, impending in combination as well. You said, hey, I've got enough discounts on the main key cards I need to have here as well. All I need to do is just sort of like dig for that little bit of last little oomph at the end there, and just went for it right off the back end, found the cards that were necessary, and then was able to finish off as well. And I think you could tell maybe that all that was really needed there from Absolute Zero was perhaps like 2 extra cards off the back end. All I needed was that little bit of change to make the finish come across. But of course, was unable to get those extra terms there because the winning combination was in play for Wet Goose. But what's interesting here, now that we've swapped it back around, is the fact that Wet Goose now is going to be using, of course, that Skeleton Mage that we saw before from Absolute Zero. But Absolute Zero doesn't want to use the Skeleton Mage now, actually wants to use the Shaman instead. They're probably feeling that this will be a better matchup going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Absolute Zero on the Shaman. Now we will prove, who was right and who was wrong in terms of their bans, right?
Well, muck pools have been thrown down as well for the time being as well. Wildfire picked up nice and early here as well for Wet Goose. And it's going to be that totemic call as well. Quite happy to just continue to throw that one into play. And yeah, let's see what ends up happening here, because it is going to be early games at this moment in time. For those of you wondering what is going to be in hand here for Wet Goose, he's got another Wildfire, Mordress, Fire Eye, Arcane Intellect of the Coin, First Flame, and Reckless Apprentice. So it's going to be another Wildfire as well. So very nice to just play those nice and early, get an extra 3 damage in that hero power. That is very nice to have on a 2 mana ping every single time. That's so good.
If you're trying to race, these are the cards that you want to have early on, right? Like, this is I'm just going to go, you're not pressuring my board immediately, I'm going to straight up advance my game plan, and I'm going to do all of the stuff that pays off later on. I'm going to fire off First Flame, I'm going to upgrade my Fire Blast, and yeah, I mean, Absolute Zero obviously has a lot more coming as well, but scary stuff in the opening turns for Wet Goose, getting this mage charged up quickly.
Yeah, really nice on that side. Enough that Totemic Call's going to come down as well, following through what seems to be schooling as well. So just wants to get those piranhas into hand there. And I mean, yeah, that's nice to have as well. It's good to also be powering up some totems. That's what's really nice about being in that Shaman. If you're not really throwing out too much pressure, but if your opponent also is just continuing to power, you can actually get some very nice totems onto the board straight away. And then that does begin to add up.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, right? It's certainly not a bad start for Absolute Zero either, right? Curving out of that muck pools, but okay, Mutanus eats, what was that?
What you're going to see what he does. He ate Prince Renathal.
Yeah, missed more. You really wanted to eat more Dresh, but
yeah.
Unfortunately not. Dodged that bullet. I do like that there are increasingly cards like this, and the card that swaps cards out of your hand and your opponent's ways to break up these hand-based combos. You at least have to sweat if you're Wet Goose that this Merc is just gonna eat your combo finisher. But
that's the thing as well. Imagine if it did eat more Dresh. That would have been really rough there for Wet Goose. He'd be like,
not only do you now don't have a combo finisher, and that would be the world's biggest Mutanus, but sadly not happening. Do get some pretty neat. Oh my god, this is gonna eat it. This is gonna eat everything. Look at this, Brand Bronzebeard. That is the hungriest parrot I've ever seen. It eats Kel'Thuzad. It's a 14-16 macaw. Absolute Zero busting it out. Wet Goose must be actually sorry. It did not eat Kel'Thuzad. My apologies. Kel'Thuzad survived.
Can you imagine if it did though? That would have been like.
I was like, that's too small a parrot. I missed that there was another minion in hand. Damn, Wet Goose getting away with one a little bit there, because what a punishment that would have been for accidentally drawing your combo cards too early.
Oh, that would have been so rough in that sense. But Golaki Ravager now is going to come down. There's going to be 3 extra Molochs coming into the play. There's going to be the Amalgam Clownfish as well.
Yep.
I mean, I still would be pretty happy, though, with the overall outcome of that one if I was Wet Goose, purely because I've at least still got Kel'Thuzad in play there, because things could have gone really badly.
That could have been game over.
Yeah, Absolute Zero would have just been sitting there laughing, going, okay, cool, no worries. You've got no opportunity for him to come back. And like you said, that is a huge macaw. All right, 14-14. Still has the big Pirate Admiral as well, buffing everything up. The Cookie there obviously is going to be providing a little bit of extra oomph to the Lady Anaconda on the side as well, which does help out with those nature spells.
That Fire Cell doesn't feel too good there. Only killing 2 minions and giving your opponent the Cookie's Stirring Rod. I guess it's you got to do what you got to do, but we're kind of wasting some cards here. The one bailout Wet Goose is, unfortunately, as big as your Macaw is, you're against a freeze mage, basically. Like, this Nightcloak Sanctum is easily going to lock down that Parrot, and there's more where that came from, too, if not immediately in hand. You can see Flurry, 2 copies in hand. It probably won't be attacking anytime soon, if ever, but... it's a moral victory to make a Parrot that big, to eat one of your opponent's finishes.
The moral victory. I like the way that you put that one out there as well.
Yeah,
of course,
I feel good
still
about
has
it.
other things that he can do as well. As you can see, continue to power up as well. It's going to be throwing out those Morlocks. He's going to choose another Clownfish as well to have there in hand there, and is going to have those extras in place. We'll have a number of extra damage that can come out as well. As you can see there, we'll be able to go to face at least with the Lady Anaconda for the time being as well. And that does mean that there's a massive board there. The Fire Sale was already used beforehand as well, which means the Wave Clear isn't really going to be there. But at least, like you said, does have the ability to lock things down for the time being.
Yeah, exactly. And it's worth noting, of course, we haven't really touched on it yet, but this mage list also benefiting from Prince Renathal, right? Like, yes, it is kind of a combo deck, and we saw that it can maybe limit how much you can power up parts of your deck. Both Kel'Thuzad and Mordresh take a little work to get to full power, and you maybe don't find your volatile skeletons, or you maybe don't find your wildfires to upgrade that hero power, but the synergies are broad enough in the deck that, like that Quest Hunter, you sort of feel that you'll get there in the end, and just having that extra life buffer is proving so valuable, right? Like, Wet Goose is amazingly healthy right now, even though Absolute Zero has this huge board, and with the Macaw and the Null just getting frozen turn after turn, it's a real struggle to wear down Wet Goose.
And you can see he's still trying to do it as well for the time being. That cooking Stone Rod is doing, or is at least providing some value in the sense that he's able to continue clearing away his volatile mages. As you can see, that having that large board means that most of the damage isn't going towards his face or towards those big members as well. So as you can see, he's now finally managed to get to a point where maybe now he can actually begin to dish out some real damage in those next couple of turns.
Yeah,
of course, Kel'Thuzad is still going to be the Second Flame, the Flurry. There's still options available here for Wet Goose. He's not in the frying pan just yet.
Yeah, even though Absolute Zero isn't on one of these 40-card decks, there's no Prince Renathal in this Shaman list, it is still kind of a reactive control Shaman. It is playing a lot of those one-off legendaries, right? This is the Sire Denathrius list. But you can kind of see how this is getting you into trouble, right? You made those Pirate Piranha Swarmers at the start of the game. You have so much mana available there. That was a discounted copy of Command of Neptulon. That's a very powerful card in your deck, getting discounted by the Lady Anaconda you evolved up. That should be the basis for a really big tempo turn, but the cards in hand just don't kind of line up very well. Snowfall Guardian seems really defensive for the game state currently, and you're going to be able to maybe get some great use out of it here with Kel'Thuzad and all these skeletons on board now. But compared to a deck where all of your cards are doing the same thing and working towards, just killing your opponent dead or setting up the one combo, it seems like Absolute Zero is kind of forced to waste some of these turns because, that you just haven't drawn the right combination of cards.
Yeah, I can agree with that sense there as well. We'll throw down that Sleep Breaker as well, which of course gives that chill effect. So you can start freezing things down. Looks like it's going to be the Kel'Thuzad for the time being. Does get a Wild Pearl Cavern as well for the time being. So just a nice little play off the back end as well. When it's all said and done though, when you think about it, still was able to provide at least a little bit of extra damage towards that face. Now Wet Goose not looking as healthy as before. And Absolute Zero is now really beginning to ramp up that extra damage. As you can see, it has that Wild Pearl Cavern to continue generating value out of those minions.
You're right. I should give Absolute Zero credit. That even without additional big spells being played that turn, the Command of Neptulon is just so powerful. Those Water Revenants add so much to the board, and now finally the supply of freezing effects starting to run dry. Hasn't really been able to set up the combo too quickly. And being forced to play out Kel'Thuzad essentially for board control is huge, especially when we remember that Mordresh FireEye has already been eaten by that brilliant Macaw. So that's the two really big finishes out of this mage deck. Obviously, there's plenty of damage left. There's cards like Magister Dawngrasp as well. So there's individual high impact plays available. But Wet Goose probably not going to pull off some massive 20 plus damage turn out of nowhere here, and that means Absolute Zero can kind of just go back to the grind game plan, and we will have time to see these cards like Snowfall Guardian achieve maximum value because you don't feel this urgent pressure.
Well, that Commander Savara does come down, gives a little bit of extra oomph back into Wet Goose's hand there. He has a second flame, has a first flame, still has that flurry available as well. But what's really key here is that initial turn by Wet Goose did clear away what was a very strong board for Absolute Zero. But like you said, still has that Snowfall Guardian, which can just regenerate it, bring it back into play once again as well. Has still got the Bolo Hammer Belt, the Snowfall Guardian again as a second turn. So
Yeah.
has these options to play afterwards to really refill with strong minions onto the board.
It's a little, yeah, Wet Goose is able to reload the hand, but there's a kind of weak spells there, right? Like, you got one board clear, and you do have, still Kel'Thuzad, the Inevitable, hanging out on board. But once if these big minions are cleared away, and Absolute Zero is still pretty healthy and has a lot of gas left, it kind of starts to feel like Absolute Zero has run Wet Goose out of resources nearly. This Grey Sage Parrot's going to help, but yeah, like, just freezing the board with Flurry isn't enough at this point. You have to figure out a plan for actually killing this Shaman deck. That Bolner Hammerbeak looking very ominous in hand, right? Absolute Zero confidently sitting on that. I gotta rescan this list again to try and figure out what the best remaining combo is with it, but suffice to say, I don't think Absolute Zero is going to have as much trouble figuring out a way to win from this position as Wet Goose is, assuming, of course, that these last couple of legendary minions on board can't get the job done.
Well, you were talking about those spells that reloaded on through. It definitely were, cheap spells on that side. There does help again with clearing the board here from Absolute Zero, but like you said, still has a 10-8 on board there. It's frozen for the time being. Has another Sleep Breaker up in hand as well. So definitely he's going to have the option to actually really begin to find options to kill soon, because Wet Goose was reloaded before, but is now starting to run out.
And you can kind of see here the difference between a combo deck and more of a mid-range controlling deck. Like, the emphasis on Wet Goose is you don't really have a plan for going this far past the point where you played Kel'Thuzad the Inevitable. You sort of, what do you mean, what do you play next? Like, the game's over, right? But no, and wow, okay. Kind of fun. You look at your opponent's hand just to confirm. This is why we've been holding onto the Piranhas. My apologies. So you can make sure to give your opponent
a Piranha.
Unfortunately, you don't really get something of that much greater value. At least Flurry is going to, in this situation where you're dragging the game long, you're getting more and more value out of these totems. You still got cards in hand. It's all looking grand for you. Okay, Blizzard being drawn here. That's going to clean up some more of the board. But at this point, the Snowfall Guardian's in play, and Wet Goose has to really worry about that. Not even
at least it will freeze. I mean, that's the thing as well. The Amplified Snow Flurry is going to come in as well, so at least the hero power will be cheap. But again, I mean, like, a cheap hero power is nice, but there's still so much power available for Absolute Zero. But as I say that, I mean, like, he's got a Wild Paw Cavern, which is nice. I mean, the other thing as well is he's got, like, his Flurry isn't really doing much. Those Piranhas aren't doing too much. He needs a nice big finisher card that's left in those 9 cards in hand that actually really put into it. Command of Neptulon, that's very nice in that sense.
What do you think about Wet Goose making the decision to trade on their own turn with cards like Commander Savara there? Because at this point, I'll be honest, this is I'm gonna like make myself look silly by having an opinion here. I would be maybe just going face. Like, if your opponent wants to trade on their turn, sure. If your opponent wants to attack your face, sure. But as long as you're freezing that 10 power Snowfall Guardian, I don't know if you win by, like, chiseling away at these smaller minions. Like, your window must be closing here. I don't think there's draws left in the deck that pull you back so hard. You kind of want to be just going face as hard as you can. You can kind of tell that, 2 out of 3 cards in your opponent's hand are Piranha Swarmers. You know that. So it's not like they have a lot of gas that they're going to, like, threaten to lethal you with. Just go for the jugular. But unfortunately now, Absolute Zero, the board has been depleted again, but Gorlock Ravager is going to refill the hand with stuff. And now you got to wonder, do you play Bolner Hammerbeak? I guess you can play the Murloc first and see what you draw, but if you draw more Battlecry Murlocs, maybe now is the time to deploy it. There's not that much left for either side.
Yeah, I think the thing here as well is that Wet Goose was playing Prince Renathal as well, so has like 19 cards to be continued drawing columns. We've probably thought, hey, you know what? I can probably survive out, and perhaps, with the extra arsenal that I can have here, if I can just protect my life total, I can allow that to work. But like you said here, Absolute Zero is just continuing to reload time and time again, and that's the real advantage of having these mid-range decks, and of course being able to control off the back end of that, and just saying, yeah, you might be able to reach some sort of combination or some sort of arsenal, but I'll just have my stronger cards quicker, and that really is beginning to wear down on Wet Goose here.
I guess we're just holding Bolner Hammerbeak. Like, this card is clearly earmarked only for Brucana the Elements or Sire Denathrius, right? Like, you're only using it on your big legendaries, because otherwise, like, we're getting to the point where if you get board cleared again, obviously you must be wondering, how much can my opponent possibly have left? But if you get to the point as Absolute Zero where you don't really have anything else to play except this Bolner and you don't have a way to get value off it, it's going to feel so bad, because you could have at least gotten a couple of extra triggers there, a few extra cards, like random elementals. Who knows how good that could have been for you. But, you know, just trusting in the deck. There are only 6 cards left here, but having not been able to clear out this Kel'Thuzad is tricky now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in that sense here. So he's got the Makar here.
Goes for the Arid Stormer first. So you want to get 2 Rush Wind Fury attackers. Can't argue with that too much.
He's going to play out that initial attack first, though, so just sort of clear things away. I think the other thing we also need to take into account here as well is that with Absolute Zero as well, like, I mean, again, it still has 18 cards in deck. You've only got 5 now left for Absolute Zero. Webgis is probably happy with continuing to play this out longer, because again, that Fire Blast has just been providing insane value, because of course he upgraded it very early. That's been 3 damage every tick. I mean, you can see Absolute Zero was putting it together really impressive boards, but being able to have 3 damage from 2 mana, like that, again, that's just free. You're not copying any damage to the face there. You can just throw out that 2 damage out of the blue. Ooh. I honestly think it's really good value to have that from the start of the game all the way through to the end, and Wet Goose is quite happy to play it out longer, because, you know, he's getting a bit. The Gold Star Null's going to come out here finally as well, another Piranha Swarmer, so again, there's still going to be some nice big options available, but Absolute Zero is actually looking to sort of just maintain control, which, now that the Nightcloak Sanctum is out, that's going to be more volatile skeletons just coming into play.
Let's be real, Absolute Zero right now is like cursing the gods. There's 4 cards left in deck, that's where your finishers live. You played this game expecting to have already drawn, like, imagine if Sire Denathrius was infusing this whole time, right?
Okay, absolutely, right? Like,
that's how your deck is meant to win. If you just don't, if it's just the last card in your deck, what are you really meant to do? I and probably Zero and probably Goose kind of assumed that the game wasn't going to get to this point, right? It's not as though Wet Goose has had any particularly explosive turns, but as you said, when Absolute Zero is just kind of drawing 1 card a turn and it's just a Wild Boar Cavern. Wild Boar Cavern, yeah, I mean, great to have it now. Still. Cool, awesome, fantastic. It's still a good card to have, right? It's still a 10/10. It's going to heal you crucially, but you must be so sad that you didn't have it this entire time that you've been trading off boards. Just drawing your mid-game stalling cards that are meant to get to you to 10 mana when you already have 10 mana.
He's got lethal just off the
That's it, exactly, right? Like, Absolute Zero was just drawing the stalling cards when you needed to, when you were already at the point to deliver the death blow, just couldn't find it. I don't know if you want to blame, well, that's what you get for playing a Shaman deck where you don't have to draw enough cards or reliably find those pieces, but at some point, you gotta curse variance.
I could definitely agree with that as well. I think he even had, you know, the gambling card there as well to dig for something a bit deeper as well. Like, yep, just throw away my entire hand and I'll get something else back from it as well. And he took the gamble and it just didn't pay off, even though he was just looking to get something off the back of that. So unfortunately for our friend there, for Absolute Zero, they just wasn't able to actually find that initial, you know, kickoff key at the very end there, and it does mean it's going to be a nice, quick, clean sweep here for Wet Goose.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to the sort of narrative I flagged at the start, both players kind of banning a different option, both players leaving the mage deck in. You could argue this means, you know, the question, which deck is a better matchup in this sort of like spell-based combo-heavy decks? Is it the Warlock that's more able to defeat the Mage, or is it the Shaman? Now, I think it'd be unfair to make a judgment on the Shaman or on Absolute Zero over that last game, because there was some outlier draws there, not only failing to find your own finishes, but your opponent having that Wildfire charged up from turn 2, basically. That being said, Wet Goose wins. You know, the Shaman deck did not get there, so perhaps we know a little bit more about how to combat the Mage deck going forward.
Yeah, pretty much couldn't agree any further with you there as well on that one. But that being said, though, guys, we do have Home Master and Wet Goose coming up very shortly. Before we do move to a quick break there, just want to, of course, shout out our sponsors, which, of course, is going to be Macca's, which, of course, will be bringing you all of the match highlights throughout this competition. You'll be able to find that out on Twitter as well. All of the I'm loving it moments will be available at the end of the show. And, of course, Mate Internet and Mobile. make sure you jump in there and upgrade your mobile and internet today. And if you throw out there hashtag Let's Be Mates into the chat, there's a chance to win a two card packs worth of value of $3.95. So if you want to have a chance to win those card packs, make sure you let us know that, hey, let's hashtag Let's Be Mates, and make sure we can jump into it. With that being said, though, guys, we do have, again, still some more Hearthstone action coming up, so please do not go anywhere. And welcome back to week one of the ANZ Hearthstone Open, presented by Blizzard and AEL. Pretty much, I think we're ready to jump straight into the action. Home Master has been waiting to jump into this as well. As you can see, where Goose will be the victor up against Absolute Zero. We're in the loser bracket finals at this moment in time here, and whoever does win this will be going up against JJ, who's been having a nice little break there, happy to chill out and relax, I imagine. Of course, Home Master is feeling a little bit of the grudge there. It was like, I beat this guy last time, how can he come back and be so strong this time around? Well, still we'll have an opportunity to take out JJ, just needs to get through Wet Goose first.
Yeah, and maybe Wet Goose doesn't have that like pre-existing history with JJ as a motivator to get to the finals, but an even bigger motivator the winner of this match secures their qualification to the final stage of this event, right? This is the Eastern qualifier. This is mainly about qualifying. Obviously, there's some prizes on the table today and some pride as well. But if you get to the finals, you're not secured top prize and top seeding yet, but it is both players in the finals qualify. So this is a very important match in a lot of ways for these players to ensure that they can advance in the Hearthstone Open, for future weeks.
Couldn't agree more. Also, we have to talk about the quick little bans as well. Homemaster decided to get rid of Wet Goose's Skeleton Mage, and then on the flip side, Wet Goose got rid of I believe it's the Quest Hunter that Homemaster has been bringing across the field. What's the advantage of this is that we get to see this Mine Rogue in action right here, right now as well. And Wet Goose has already put up a pretty strong board here as well, just saying, yep, cool, no worries, you can let me pressure, I'm happy to do that. I think most of the players have been banning away this Rogue purely because they've got those control decks, but I think Wet Goose is quite happy with his Shaman to actually jump into this particular battle because he's going to amass a very strong board here with his Murlocs, and that maybe Homemaster will not have enough time to finish off that combo to at least, throw off all those mines that we've been seeing the Warlocks flinging this entire tournament.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen a lot of these matchups where both decks kind of are more adept in the late game in terms of where their main threat comes from. And so it sort of becomes a game of who can go bigger or who can execute a completely lethal combo a turn or two earlier, or even who can sort of transition to putting on early pressure with just some random utility minions better. But this is, looking quite different, right? Maybe you can consider this Shaman a late game deck as well because it does have those couple of legendary finishes. But in terms of having a whole Murloc package, you are way more adept at providing a convincing early board. And this Homemaster Rogue deck, we haven't gotten the chance to see it yet. In essence, it's called Mine Rogue for a reason. That Naval Mine is sort of the signature card of the deck, funnily enough. Lots of ways to duplicate the Death Rattle, so you sort of accomplish over several turns what that Warlock combo attempts to accomplish in one. That being said, how fast can it really go when you compare it to the pressure of getting hit with Murlocs over and over again for several turns? And compared to something like the Warlock deck that has all the healing and board clear, I wonder how well it responds to the pressure.
Well, I mean, one thing we can already say that's off that initial iteration that's different from Wet Goose to Absolute Zero's version of play. You actually comboed that Makar, of course, with the Mutinous Devourer. Whereas this time around, Wet Goose is going full pressure. I want to get some more extra Warlocks into board using a much weaker deck in comparison beforehand. And of course, this means he gets that extra pressure, but won't have that big payoff that he had before. Partially because maybe there's just less people to eat as well with Mutinous Devourer. You won't be getting the same value.
Yeah, okay. Oh, okay. So this is just a race, right? That's the answer. Homemaster doesn't really have the board clear. We saw a little bit of control earlier, right? But even firing off that Wicked Stab, what was that? The Tooth of Nefarian, my apologies, earlier on was as much about triggering the honorable kill, exactly finishing off a Murloc in order to generate resources in hand, as it is to, keep control of the board, because we've seen Homemaster, fire that warding shot, triple triggering the Naval Mine, and that trigger effect that will last for the next couple of turns. You can see the potential to go, Swift Scale Trickster, zero cost smoke screen. That's some value. But what will we hit?
Well, let's see what comes off the cross here as well. It does get more preparation. Backstab, Blackwater Cost Blast. That's unfortunate, but still.
I mean, the unfortunate part is you draw 5 cards for 0 mana. That feels pretty good. Trigger any Death Rattles drawn 3 times and draw 0 Death Rattles is a bit rough.
Yeah, that's been unfortunate. You can tell Homemaster's probably not happy with that, but you can tell this Rogue deck has got more up its sleeve than purely just that, as well as the other thing that's happening here is just continued power through this board. That is a lot of minions just up there for the time being as well, and now I finally can start going towards the face, return some of the damage. That Cookie probably going to be very invaluable as well, because of course providing +2 life every time it gets a little hit on, which is something Homemaster does not want to have here. Does obviously just grab himself a little bit of extra stuff on there. Does get a Wicked Stab there, so it's a little bit of extra mana. Well, not extra mana, so a little bit of extra damage when the mana does hit that point here, but I feel like it's still too early in the game for that Wicked Stab to be doing what he wants it to do. Does draw out the Forsaken Lieutenant as well, and perhaps not what Homemaster's been looking for. Yes, it's nice cards, but he wants that extra free damage.
So that's a lot of damage. Potentially. That's 8. That's lethal, right? Assuming you can kill them both. You can backstab away the taunt, the 0-2, or just hit it with the sword. And that should be lethal. The effect Oh, actually, you can't immediately trigger the second one, right? Unless, no, you backstab your own one, so that's lethal. Yeah.
I think he's gonna, he's gonna.
Yeah, I had to figure that out. I'm like, I'm sure it gets the kill here somehow. Homemaster doesn't need to think about it. Just goes
there we
for
go.
it.
Wow.
Has the exact tools. Really nice job there.
That is a quick deck to play there, and it's just, to be honest, that is literally like what you'd expect from a rogue deck, right? You'd want it to be like, hey, I'm gonna get in there and assassinate the hell out of you, and it's gonna happen very quickly. And if you can survive long enough, it's obvious that you become aware of the assassin inside your room, and at that point, you kind of like call the guards, like, oh my god, guards, come assist me.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Would you be able to outrace the Murloc deck if it was the more aggressive variant we saw being played earlier today?
No,
it's impossible to say because all the aggro decks have unfortunately died out. Like you mentioned, we even get the chance to see the Imp Warlock, but the players who were playing that deck, I don't know if they actually got to play the deck because it attracts a lot of bans, but those aggro-focused lineups have fallen by the wayside. It seems to be pretty much all controlling value-oriented decks from here on out, and that makes me think that Homemaster is going to have a real edge with how fast that rogue deck was able to produce a kill.
Like, what was insane about it as well is most of the time your pressure that you have with these aggro decks is built through the fact that you've got minions onto the board. This one doesn't do that, right? It literally, you do throw out, the Naval Mine, you do throw out other things, but the whole purpose is to get the effect. It's not to have that pressure on board dealing to the face, and the fact that you have to wave clear. It's like, cool, clear my mind, I don't care, that's just more damage to your face, right? He's looking to combo with those cards there, and that's just so much harder for these other control decks to do with, because typically they control the board by either freezing it, obviously using their abilities to retain life and suck that back off on the board, using the life drain abilities. You can't do that against this deck. That is definitely a very interesting deck that they're thrown into play.
Yeah, again, you can kind of, when you're looking at all these later game decks, right, there's kind of a continuum. Almost any late game deck in Hearthstone, it seems, is going to have kind of an explosive combo finish in mind. You sort of can't really afford to play a deck. I think the only one that we've seen before is like the old Paladin deck from last season, the Control Paladin. Didn't necessarily have a way to deal you 30. It really just believed in its ability to play enough like 9/9 Divine Shields. But most of the time, players want to have that sense of inevitability where it's like, no, I'm guaranteed to be able to kill you past a certain point. If I have a certain pile of resources in my hand, you're just dead. So when you assume that's the baseline, the spectrum you got to look at really is like, how fast can you go with it, and how dependent are you on executing it as one single combo versus being able to just add up damage across the game, right? The Warlock deck, it has the chance to heal itself, it has cool board clear, but it's much harder to get sort of some of its parts gameplay where you're doing a little bit of damage at a time. You do kind of have to wait until you have 30 damage all at once. Whereas we can see with this Hunter deck, and even now more so that Rogue deck, the ability to just play your cards on curve, just 3 damage at a time, and add that up quickly to a kill all the same, as well as having the potential for a very high damage late game combo where you use those damage multiplier cards together. That's great flexibility to have in these matchups where the board isn't a concern.
Yeah, the certainty of it is really what's nice, and you can tell that's why it sort of killed off a lot of these buff this minion deck. The paladins have sort of not appeared. The priests just don't seem to be there anymore because, of course, the fact of the matter is normally what they like to do is last for a specific period of time, either beat you to death with your own win condition, or perhaps draw one big card that is just too sticky to remove. But this sort of just cuts out that middleman, right? It says, cool, you're just not going to get a chance to hit that point because we have a certain ability to kill you with these like mind decks coming into play.
Yeah. All right. Okay, but now we're getting to see suddenly a flip to a matchup we have seen a couple of times already. I wonder if it'll go differently this time. It's going to be the Shaman against the Warlock. And I'm a bit worried that this might play out sort of how the previous games have with this Shaman deck, right? We've seen it sort of stumble against the Mage because its finishing power isn't as guaranteed, even though the game went very long. We've seen it get overrun by the Rogue deck because the Rogue deck's finisher, it's like absolutely inevitable. It doesn't have any trouble producing damage, whereas, the Shaman is relying on being able to hit with minions and add that damage up. And so now we've got this Warlock deck that has that 30 damage combo, that has healing and has plenty of ways to kill the minions off. Is Wet Goose going to actually be able to finish Homemaster?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Nice big damage coming out from Wet Goose immediately. A nice big board as well, of course, with those Gnolls and the Piranha there, just to start putting some pressure on. And Homemaster needs to start thinking now I imagine at this point you can see actually hovering onto that bread spice baker, saying, you know what, is this too much pressure? I think you want to hold on to that for a little bit later onto the match, perhaps use your wave clear, but does opt in to say, you know what, I just need my health now. Does throw it down. It's still going to be a 3-2 body down to 29 or back up to 29 HP, but Werkus is continuing to ramp up even further. It looks like it's going to be a coin coming out, maybe perhaps that wild pearl cavern as well. As you can see, another piranha swimmer as well, just to amp up that extra damage. Happy to clear that away, so that particular body, and now that damage he healed up goes right back into him. Now 19 HP.
Yeah, unfortunately, you just don't have that many other choices, right? It always feels pretty bad to play Spice Bread Baker there, but because there's the phase of the game is this handlock deck where you keep your hand full, and then once you sort of rolled out, you get rid of all your resources, you play all your cards out, then you're kind of just in this weakened state until the, maybe in the late game you can do something with Impending Catastrophe to reload, and that is a power of this variant of the deck that's emerged. But, playing Spice Bread Baker basically just buys you a turn, if that there doesn't really advance your position in the game otherwise, and even lets Wet Goose sort of build up the board to be nastier than last turn. But what are you going to do? Cast a Hellfire that doesn't finish off these nulls? At least now you could make the decision to Hellfire and then play Mortal Coil, but it looks like we're going to hold off. And I do like this play, get at least if it only buys you a turn with the Bakers, at least it buys you a turn, compared to Hellfire, which would damage you and not even really clear that much of your opponent's board. You want ideally to be able to finish off 2 of the larger minions when you pull the trigger on that spell.
Absolutely, but I mean, looking at this.
Oh, that's the draw of the really century.
Nice. Oh, very nice. You can literally just throw out that mage, just follow through over the
heart of the cards. Yeah, I mean, without that, there's like no good play otherwise, right? At least my apologies. You have the entitled customer. So the board is getting wiped either way, but wow, what an option to have available now. You could Thalnos and Hellfire and just draw a card. And you can hold on to that entitled customer for future, because the entitled customer can even clear larger minions later on. You're going to be able to exactly for a whole board of 4 health minions. Man, that feels great.
Yeah, Home Master.
All those honorable kills.
That's honestly like the breath of fresh air that Home Master needed. It just felt like Wet Goose was just holding him underwater for the time being. He just didn't have a way to get back
holding
up
underwater.
Yeah, exactly, right.
We dive beneath the waves, command of Neptulon, the Revenants rise from the deep, and suddenly there's a board full of 4 health minions again.
Well, we'll see there's going to be the Naval Mine perhaps going down there. It does have the entitled customer as well.
You kind of have to play it, right?
I feel like you do, yeah.
You can't, there's no real other line. It's very inefficient to try and Hellfire into something else. I guess you could play a Naval Mine, blow the Naval Mine up with the Grimoire, which also, you have to kill the mine at some point, and then Hellfire and clear this board away. But even then, you're now 3 cards down on your card count for whenever you want to play the customer on the next board. So at that point, do you just run it out now?
Yeah, it's pretty much a hard line for Home Master to play. The other thing that's been really rough for Home Master, he's got no ruined rods as well. Like that's
you do at least have the Phylactery and Tamsin though.
Yeah, I mean he's got pieces of the puzzle there, but you kind of want to also be able to get the ability to make them a bit lower in terms of what you want to play. Yes. But I mean, we have to wait and see what ends up going.
Okay, we're going for the mine line here. Yep. Oh, interesting. Okay, slightly different.
Okay. Let's
really,
clear
we
it
get
out.
a Grimoire Tamsin. Okay, I did not expect that, I'll be honest. I guess Hellfire dealing 3 damage to you is pretty scary when you're this low already and you don't really have any healing left in hand, but if all you wanted to do is clear the board, I'm shocked that it was better to kill off Tamsin, who's usually a key piece of your combo, compared to spending the entitled customer, who's now been, devalued, right? Sort of running out of steam with those complaints. The entitlement is waning as the hand size does.
I think the other thing that we need to take into account here as well is that while this has been happening, Wet Goose has been taking damage.
Yes,
so
that's
you
what
might
I was
not
about
need
to
the you don't need the Tamsin to amp up the damage there for the OTK anymore. Now that he's down to 19 HP, and I don't believe there is any real recovery. This Shaman deck.
Cookie is lifesteal, the Rod is lifesteal, there's a Murloc Ocular.
Yeah.
Murlocular. Sorry.
Yeah, there is some sort of recovery there. Perhaps, yeah, that Tamsin.
There's enough
Tamsin
random
might
cards
be,
that get
ooh.
generated. I'm just like, if I had a different clear in hand, my instinct would be to do that. But that again, that's the difference between I've never played this deck before at this level, and I'm just guessing versus Wetgoose like, oh sorry, or Home Master. I've practiced this and I've really thought about it, sort of thing. I trust Home Master's play. We'll see how this turns out. We have drawn Queen Ashara, right? Not in every deck, but Home Master does have that little extra source of late game power, another high impact draw that has now been drawn at maybe the ideal spot, right? Other than actually drawing your Rune Rod, which you now draw. Yep. Probably the better thing you could have found. And you might not even choose to deploy the rod right now, because it would be good to start upgrading the phylactery, but you don't really have... you need to answer this board state, right? You're on 9 life. I don't think you can just spin your wheels and buff your combo when you're at this much pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's really a lot to get through as well. And you can see Home Master is thinking through the lines once again there. Might start digging there. He's thinking about that impending catastrophe as well. No imps, mind you, as well. So a bit of a desperation sort of draw on that back end. Okay. But it looks like it will be the power up. The Rune Mythical Rod is going down. The impending catastrophe comes up as well. Gets the Goldshire Null as well in the back end here. And it's just going to look to drain for the time being. So at least we'll get back a little bit of extra HP off that end there, and perhaps is looking towards the future, not the now.
Interesting decision to commit 5 mana to the... Like, obviously, I'm about to draw some cards, maybe multiple, like, I gotta get this Rune Mythical Rod going, but, yeah, may prove to regret that. Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's a feel bad.
It's happened, it's happened.
you can tell
you may now regret playing the Tamsin, I guess. Like, I mean... Without the phylactery, Tamsin herself can't like fulfill her main purpose. But yeah, now you've had the other part of your combo robbed away, and you're dying, and your Ashara's not charged, and your Rod's not charged. Yeah, this is trouble for Home Master with capital T. Maybe the last turn.
That was just rough. You can just see, it was just like, there was no hesitation for Wetgoose. He was like, oh, there's a phylactery, no problem. Let me just swap you. I'll trade your phylactery for my Piranha. This is a good trade.
I will pay you a Piranha Swarmer to go away. How about have this one colorful fish for your combo piece? Like, my god, it's so pretty. Like, yeah. Anyway.
100%. This theater guy, he is extremely persuasive in terms of what you want to be able to get out of it as well. And
yeah, it's like one step up from Magic Beans, you know? Like, how about this one cost Piranha for your phylactery, the thing keeping you alive as a warlock?
Even I felt it to the point where I was kind of like, oh, he sees it. He's playing the theater. Let's see what happens. Oh, he sees flat. There was just,
that's why you played the card.
It was a
perfect timing.
That was just an moment immediately off the back, and then you could tell Home Master's probably feeling it as well.
Yeah.
This is glorious and terrible. I think it's just terrible and terrible.
Yeah, terrible and terrible. Glorious for one of us.
Yeah,
glory like fun, often zero sum in card games. But yeah, honestly, it's good to see the Warlock deck, the Shaman deck do that, right? Because we've seen what happens when you draw the wrong half of the deck, and we've identified that is a problem. You've got these very narrowly purposed cards. Sometimes you draw not the one you want in the matchup, but that time you found the anti-combo card, you caught the anti-combo deck in a tough place, you put some pressure on, and then just when your opponent's the most vulnerable, knockout punch from Theater. Now, game 3 of the match, right? Or is this just game 2? I've lost my mind.
This is game 3. Game 3.
So many of the similar when everyone is playing the same decks, right? It all just kind of blurs together very quickly.
Remember, you know why? It was so quick. The Home Master had the Mind Rogue. It was
the
so
Rogue,
quick.
the Rogue deck. How did I forget that? I'm sorry, Home Master. But you know, the Rogue can't save you now, right? It's retired. You got to win with this Warlock list, and we're back in the mirror.
Well, let's see how this goes again. Home Master does play that Queen Ashara instead of having that Smothering Starfish instead. In fact, a little bit different in terms of that sense there, because I believe there's 2 Smothering Starfish here for Wetgoose. So it does have those tech cards that can, effectively ruin a little bit of the combination if you try to play that in 2 terms instead of the 1
Oh, that's a big draw for Home Master, getting that null. Because, looking at those starting hands, Wetgoose has a big edge, I think, of both. Not only do you have both Rune Mythical Rods, but Wetgoose going second, obviously, not everything you can control, but you take advantage when you can. Has the ability to coin out the Mythical Rod, has the card draw in hand on top of that, whereas Home Master was packing a lot of sort of board clear tools that weren't, and healing from the Baker that weren't necessarily going to be useful, but having access to this Goldshire Null means you'll be able to set some kind of pace, you'll be able to maybe distract Wet Goose from just advancing the combo as fast as possible. But Naval Mine on the board, that's going to advance the combo if it's not silenced. I think even if it is silenced, it still counts.
He can't silence though. Home Master doesn't run Smothering Starfish.
Oh, well, there you go then. Really? Not even one? Bold.
Not even one. Yeah, he actually chooses, instead of running the Starfish, he runs Blood Mage Thalnos, and he runs Queen Ashara. So different tech.
Life Drain the Naval Mine. What's the risk of leaving the mine in play?
I think it was just something for him to play.
But
I mean, I get what you're saying.
I guess you have to get cards out of your hand in order to not overdraw at some point. But you've got like Touch of the Nathrazim if you're really desperate. It's just like you drain 3 to blow up a minion that does you 4 damage. I guess it's going to do you 4 damage either way. So you're just draining 3 as a sort of buffer against that. But man, that's some way to spend your mana.
Well, we do have that finish cycle come out through, actually. So let's, yep, a little bit of play there. Does he play what is he playing? He's got Impending Catastrophe, so he's still got enough. He's got more than enough mana to play it anyway.
Yeah.
So he's just using it a different.
Just making sure to not, again, both players very conscious of the risk of overdrawing. You don't want to have the last card you draw be one of your combo pieces. Very important to like, even when Wet Goose right now must be loving the situation, but don't get overconfident, make some sort of basic error, and find yourself suddenly without the advantage you thought you had. That feels so bad.
Well, looks like it's going to be monocoiling one of the imps at the end here, just get a little bit of extra card draw anyway. So happy to throw that in the end there.
And you can see how little pressure is on Wet Goose, right? Just trading away the shipments, just buffing all this draw, because of course you've got this Goldshire Nolan here that's free. There's no risk of not trading off. Your opponent hasn't shown any, like, your opponent almost can't be going faster than you in terms of the combo, and this lets you play like you're ahead. You know, you've got these Bakers. It's up to your opponent to try and kill you. You're not scared of dying incrementally because you've got the healing in hand. So as long as you're setting up the combo faster than Home Master is, this is in the bag for Wet Goose, and right now it looks tremendous.
Well, it looks like it will be a Touch of the Nathrazim as well coming in, just get a little bit of extra style there. The Impending Catastrophe as well, like you said, just to avoid that idea of a bin. It does draw another Impending Catastrophe as well, so even though you could say that, he could be behind here as well, has some options to come back. The Mortal Coil just to get a little bit extra off the back here. The Dredge Lich Tamsin as well, so some nice little pickups there, but I still feel Wet Goose is a bit more accelerated.
Home Master is doing enough to be in the race, though, right? The fact that you've got a Tamsin in hand is all important. The fact that you hit that Impending Catastrophe into Impending Catastrophe really does a lot to kind of keep it even. If you weren't able to kind of respond with your own really accelerating the plan turn, you would be in a lot of trouble. But now you've got, not only do you have things like Queen Ashara charged up, but these Rune Mithril Rod discounts on the Tamsin are going to keep you sort of in the running to combo off as soon as possible, right? Because as long as you have Tamsin discounted to 0, it shouldn't matter if your Phylactery isn't discounted. You should still be able to set up the kill.
You have enough resources to then follow through afterwards, and that means you can play, in term 7, term 8. It means that you have enough really to do what you want to do.
Wet Goose has Tamsin for 2, Phylactery for 2. The second Phylactery obviously costs nothing, so you have 4 mana plus whatever it costs you to summon enough minions. So you need what? I mean, you only need 4 minions to die with the double Death Rattle trigger, right?
Yeah.
So basically, as soon as you draw your next... I mean, Fiendish Circle makes 4 1/1 imps. So now all you need is a way to kill all those imps. As soon as you find Hellfire, the game ends.
Well, no Hellfire seems to be picked up just yet.
Or actually, Entitled Customer. How much mana are we up to? Okay, we need a bit more. Your failsafe is if you get the Rune Mithril Rod to run another round of discount on all these cards, that should also let you play everything in one turn and win. So Home Master needs to really hit the gas.
But I don't think he's got the gas right now. He did have the Impending Catastrophe, but Wet Goose, understanding that, hey, if he's got that there in play as well, I can actually use that to... He can use that to continue drawing at this point, obviously hitting that point that he needs, but that's been cleared away once again. You can tell both of these players very indicative of that idea of saying, you know what, I don't know what you can get or what you can have here, but this is one way for him to get some extra imps onto the board to actually draw something here.
Home Master gets up to 35, which is important because, you got to imagine the combo is dealing damage in increments of 8 primarily, so that means you now have to have 5 minions all trigger, but you make 4 imps and then you make Tamsin, right? So that's 5.
Still enough anyway.
It's a 40 damage combo. So if you were, what we're saying is, if you were running the 40 life card and then you play Dreadlich Tamsin, you'd give your opponent some trouble. However, what have we found here? We've got another naval mine.
Here's a phylactery. Has he got it?
Are we just going to set the board up? Because Homemaster's not running a silence. So, again, you have the option to just set up the board, right? What's the worst outcome? If you were playing against an opponent who was running the silencing Starfish, like, you would not be able to set up this 2-turn combo. It would be so punishing to have the board countered with that silence, but you're just not afraid of that. So, yeah, wait, why am I giving you more time? I'm just going to say you're pretty much dead next turn. You have no outs to this other than kill me immediately.
In which case, like, he can't throw anything out there right now. Like, it's already done. Like, he can't clear this board.
Oh, he draws up. Oh, no, he overdraws the phylactery. Oh, that's it. That's got to be the game, right? You can't really answer this.
I mean, he's got the Queen of Shara. Who knows what ancient relics can do?
Sure. All right, let's have a look. What if it's a silencing relic? No.
No, nothing there.
Unfortunate.
Well, shuffle 5 random spells into your deck.
I mean, Ring of Tides would be it, right, in terms of copying a spell. Like, you could have gotten, like, a double, triple, whatever, but, like, you just, I don't know. We're figuring out a way to get...
He's digging. This is literally just a dig right now.
Yeah, for what? You overdrew the... I guess there's nothing going here. Like, you can't get any higher life total. Your opponent has lethal on board with the death rattles. You've put minions on the board, so you know they can trigger the death rattles. Like, your better play if you could win this turn would almost be to just put nothing on the field and say, well, maybe you don't have a Hellfire, maybe you don't have a way to blow up your own board. But now it's like, well, you're going to be able to just trade off all these Ips and... Okay, we're going to commit Ritual Suicide. Yep. Grimoire of Sacrifice. Homemaster hitting the world's fanciest conceit. This is like the reverse style. This is you do like a triple backflip pike onto landing on your nose and immediately knocking yourself unconscious.
Why is it the nose?
Just, it's the most humiliating way to go out.
Fair enough.
KO, Homemaster. Sucks to lose such a decorated player, but Wet Goose. Okay, that's a real upset, Mendrix.
That is a real upset. That is absolutely... I mean, Wet Goose was the 5th seed coming into this as well. So that is absolutely a real upset coming across there. You can sort of like feel it as well, because especially when it came to that mirror was literally just perfect for Wet Goose in that scenario. Had a fantastic start. You could tell that her master was really digging for something in particular, but could never reach it. And also, just to go back to the previous matches they played, the Mine Rogue just completely swept through Wet Goose, but it was literally the same sort of scenario here when it was actually that Shaman. That Shaman really did hit this stride, and we could see what happens when it does draw those specific cards at once. And I really feel like the other thing that came that hurt Homemaster there was not running the Smothering Starfish, right?
Yeah,
he was running different tech cards.
I'm so glad that exact situation came up. That made such a difference, right? Because, like, Wet Goose didn't have the combo there, right? Not having a way to kill your own minions, it's very scary to run them out like that. Who knows how many more turns it would have taken, right? Who knows how much more comfortably Homemaster would have been able to set up his own side of the board. But not even having the Starfish in, I'm not even saying you have to be able to play it. Just having it in your deck scares your opponent. And not having it in the list means your opponent is able to make that play on you and close you out of the tournament. So that's got to sting, but I'm sure Homemaster's not going to be ignorant of that fact. Whether or not you judge, I'm still trusting in the decisions I made. That's only going to happen one game out of 1,000. I probably would have lost anyway. Whatever else, it does show the importance of these deck building decisions, even if you never draw the card.
Exactly, right? That's the thing as well, because the idea is you don't know, even if you have it or you don't have it, your opponent doesn't know that you have it. And just the thought that this person could completely destroy my entire win condition before I even have a chance to play it is enough for them to sit back and wait and perhaps wait until they do have the full combination, or perhaps not go for that setup. And it just made the difference here. I think maybe that Queen of Shara has the capability to provide the silence. I think like it's in there. It could possibly be done, but it's just too much requirement to find. It's just too unreliable for you to find it, right? Whereas the Smothering Starfish, it's one card.
Yeah.
Pop it down.
I'm still not sold on that Ashara, to be honest. In either game, we saw it, right? The first game, we drew it late and couldn't charge it up in time. It's like, it just doesn't seem like the kind of card that Warlock deck needs. It doesn't really have any trouble finding things to spend its mana on, right? That's kind of the whole advantage of Warlock. So... I'm sure there's some matchup where it becomes really crucial, but unfortunately, against the opponent that you were assigned today, Homemaster wasn't the right call.
Well, Homemaster, thank you very much for your service. It was an absolute pleasure watching you. That being said, though, we still have what's going to be, again, and congratulations to Work Goose for qualifying as well, but we still need to figure out who's going to be crowned the winner. We do have JJ waiting in the wing, who, of course, wants to get that extra little bit of money off the back end of this qualifier. So please, guys, do not go anywhere. We still have the finals left to go. Thank you so much for your patience. We are back with the ANZ Hearthstone Open presented by Blizzard and AEL. And we are here. We are at the finals. It's going to be JJ up against Wet Goose. And what's also interesting to say here, JJ only needs to win once, while Wet Goose needs to win twice. That winner's advantage is definitely very nice and very mean. But hey, that's what you get when you do win. And I don't know about you, Bard, but I'm going for JJ.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Wet Goose's play, especially in that last set of games. So I'm gonna put my faith in Wet Goose. I'd love to see Wet Goose get another upset. I think that'd just be really exciting because I thought that this was gonna be a Home Master JJ rematch. So now all in on Wet Goose to produce the unexpected outcome and get top seeding and top prize money going into the the next stage of this tournament in a few weeks' time. That being said, though, that having to win 2 best-of-3s back-to-back is tough in a game like Hearthstone, and especially with lineups like this, right? Because you've got some very these slow-paced decks. It's if you have the multi-aggro lineup, maybe you can get a run fast and kind of get yourself back on an even footing quickly. But you're gonna have to do it the hard way here as Wet Goose up against an opponent who's looked just as good today through all their matches in JJ, and the Ramp Druid deck has been left in play, so that looked absolutely fearsome.
It was monstrous, literally.
Yeah, but,
literally monstrous when it came into full swing.
True. But Wet Goose choosing to ban out the Hunter instead, so more afraid of that Quest Hunter, which it's looked pretty strong, but we have seen it lose, I think. So
okay, so checking to see what's going to be happening there in that sense there. So looking at everything else that's happening on this board, then I do want to interestingly just say what we've got here. Going back to those bans that we had before, then the Shaman went down, right? You said before, Wet Goose won't be able to play that one. The Skeleton Mage, though, how do you reckon it's going to fare into it? Because I think, again, it's the idea that the Skeleton Mage needs a lot of time to actually get to its win condition, and we've just seen these Mine Warlocks completely rip up the board. Do you reckon there's going to be an opportunity here for Wet Goose to take it away?
I think the difference that we've seen this matchup once already, right? And I anticipated the Mage, and the Mage lost, but I think that was due to some pretty rough draws, right? Like, we've seen how fast the Mage goes when you get that early Fire Blast upgraded, and sure enough, if you look there, Wet Goose, it is turn 3, or about to be turn 3, and that Fire Blast is dealing 3 damage. So I am very confident for Wet Goose here. You're at 40 life, so your opponent needs to have, the full combo to kill you. And I think that the Mage combo, just mathematically, you can do it sooner, and you can put more pressure on your opponent in the meantime. Or I guess on average you would do it sooner, because I'm sure the Warlock has some crazy Rune Mythical Rod draw. But the point is that Wet Goose, I'd imagine, is under pressure to win as soon as possible, but also there's a higher fail rate, right? We've seen Kel'Thuzad, it's not guaranteed to kill your opponent. Exactly, whereas when JJ combos, it's going to be the end of the game, right? If it's not the end of the game,
100%.
Yeah, if it's not the end of the game, you won't be comboing. So Wet Goose, in my theory that I laid out before, this is an advantage for the Mage deck. It's better to be able to spread your damage out over a few different turns. Although against the Warlock deck, this is the deck with the most access to healing. So that actually has the potential to negate that disadvantage where your opponent is sort of going faster than you by adding up damage and maybe winning on turn 6 instead of trying to full lethal you on turn 8. If you draw into your drain spells and your Spiced Bread Bakers, then your opponent is forced to go for the all-in combo just like you, and that's where your deck thrives.
There you go. Well, speaking of thriving as well, guys, we are going to announce the winner of the Mates Internet and Mobile giveaway. So if you've been throwing out those hashtag Let's Be Mates in chat for a chance to win that 2-card pack value, well, it's going to be a congratulations to Jar Jar is a Sith. Congratulations on being picked out there on the win there. So I personally really do like that name as well. So congratulations once again.
I remember that conspiracy theory
coming on through.
Everyone thought that Jar Jar Binks is going to be the ultimate Sith Lord. Like, that's the only way we can make sense of the Star Wars prequels. It had to have been an op the whole time.
So
it would be a cooler world if it had gone that way.
This would have been so good. Could you imagine at the end of it there, like after as well, when Palpatine Didn't it come back? It was just Jar Jar. Oh,
Yeah, it's like who
was
was Palpatine's master? Who taught him to be a Sith? And it's just Jar Jar Binks. It's like we never asked him how old he was. And it's like I think the funny thing is like you have two schools of Jar Jar conspiracists, right? It's like, do you believe that he comes out at the end and he's still talking like Jar Jar Binks, like he still has the accent?
He's
talking about.
You can't have it.
No. It'd be cooler if I would prefer to imagine that he just like suddenly just starts speaking normally. It's like, no, I could speak normally the whole time. I just put on this accent because I knew that you racist Jedi would just like sort of write me off as a side character, but you know, the whole time I was the mastermind. Much like Wet Goose is currently masterminding this mage deck's game plan. We haven't really seen it fire so well, right? Even when we saw this mage win before, it was a very scrappy kind of game, right? This Kel'Thuzad just sat on the board for 100 turns while the opposing shaman missed on every draw step. But things are going a lot better this time, and already I feel like JJ is under pressure to find. I guess we've got the Mithril Rod in play now, but find some discounts on these cards.
Beautiful in that sense there as well. I mean, okay, so I'm checking to see what else is happening here as well.
The repeat on that, yeah, that's the perfect usage of that Grey Sage Parrot. You love to see it. Duplicating that spell, getting those minions added up. I want to see the big Kel'Thuzad explosion, if not lethal, at least over summon a few skellies, you know? And JJ's going to help by killing off the board, which adds a few more volatile skeletons to the death pool.
Yeah, he needs. Well, you can see that this is just JJ continuing to run through as well. He continued to actually just get that up, so he just needed to get his own things up and running. The Dread Deluge Sandstorm is nice to have as well, just as a little bit of extra oomph and getting that spell into up. And you can sell now. He's getting ready to actually put everything into play as well. He's got most of the pieces of the puzzle there, so it's just a matter of Wet Goose either finding a little bit more extra HP or perhaps getting that kill win condition up into play first.
Yeah, I like this. This is a sneaky play from JJ, right? We were talking about sort of the pros and cons of going for a one-turn combo as the Warlock versus going for a more aggressive two-turn combo where you can maybe win earlier, but you put yourself at risk of your board getting somehow silenced or answered. I don't know how many options are in Wet Goose's deck that were new to the combo like that, but the decision where you could just run out a board full of imps and you have Tamsin and the Phylactery in hand, so if those stay on the board you could suddenly just pull the trigger, but if not, you didn't actually commit any truly valuable resources. Is a nice line to take. Oh, and we find Wicked Shipment, so that's the best possible combo enabler. We're already up to 4/1/1 imps. It's been traded sufficient times. Those imps are going to come back around. The benefits of giving on full display here, and that looks like a pretty easy lethal to me next turn.
Yeah, he's got to have it there as well. And I don't think he quite has.
Oh, actually,
the same
sorry. Wait, is this just now? How much does the Phylactery cost? Oh, it's 2.
It's 2. Nah, I don't think he's gonna go now. It's next turn.
We were 1 mana short.
It's gonna be next turn, which is fine there. But like, I mean, Wet Goose. Let's see if Wet Goose has got something he can pull out.
Well, because Wet Goose doesn't have like silence, right? So you can just you can make the play where you put all of the minions on the board. That being said, Kel'Thuzad going to come down, resummon all the skeletons. Not enough to really. It seems difficult with this deck to really do a huge nuke. So it kind of seems more like this Kel'Thuzad is killing over multiple turns in most cases. But
yeah, I think that's the thing. It's much slower. Like it's like you said, it's going to be over multiple turns, but it's literally at this moment in time. I feel like he's got everything he needs now to just end it right here. So JJ is quite happy to just play this line out, even if it's not this turn. He would still have a few more opportunities to make it work, and that Smoldering Starfish is played. He plays 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one's all you need to play, right? You threaten your opponent goes for it. The Kel'Thuzad play punished. I mean, you still have a wide board. That's great, but yeah, I think this is why the Mage deck. It's like the Kel'Thuzad is more about I've got to back up to Mordresh Fire Eye here. Like, I think the more successful game plan is going to be burning your opponent down and then Mordreshing them out. But it sort of seems like as we see this Mage deck more and more, it isn't putting enough damage on in the early game. It's sort of playing defensively like these Warlock decks, but it doesn't have as reliable a killing combo as the one we've just seen there. And when your opponents often have 40 life, you just can't give them this much time. Wet Goose shattered apart by those bombs, and JJ moves to within 1 game here, Mendrix, of taking out our qualifier.
Yeah, JJ being really strong right off the bat here as well. So definitely loving it for the time being in that sense. And you can see these bomb combinations that really come through from these Warlocks have just been so strong throughout this entire day of play. Probably expecting to see it throughout the tournament, unless some changes come through as well. I mean, that's one of the nice things about this meta evolving as time goes through. People might figure out a way to deal with what seems to be this certain kill that the Warlocks seem to have. Or you could just start banning it. I mean, that's the next thing you could really do. Just can't play against it if you just keep banning it.
I mean, we've seen we saw the Warlock deck like lose a bunch today, including twice in the last matchup, right? So there are cards that counter it effectively.
You mean against other Warlocks?
Well, no, the Shaman deck beat it with Theatar,
true,
right?
That's true.
And
yeah,
having Mutanus as well. Like, there's cards individually that counter it. They're putting yourself up to 40 life, especially if you run any more armor. Like, could really hurt this deck, right? Because once you have to blow up more than 5 minions, it starts becoming exponentially harder to do all that in one turn, right? And you have a deck like this one, the Celestial Alignment. We saw how badly that ruined the combo, the plan for the Hunter deck as well, right? Like, limiting how many spells your opponent can play in one turn crushes these decks. So this is why I was surprised that JJ was allowed to keep this deck instead of it getting banned out. But Wet Goose is going to try their luck against it. In the meantime, though, before we get too deep into this match, I do want to shout out a second winner for our card pack giveaway, of course, sponsored by Mate. I'm going to say Legend EV Master is the winner here, I've been told. So that's our second winner. Jar Jar is a Sith and Legend_EV Master. Thanks for following in the Twitch chat. Thanks for participating in this great event. And yeah, I hope you enjoy those card packs. Hope you rip a legendary.
Yeah, it would be fantastic if you do. That way it feels always so much sweeter because it's always better when it is free. So congratulations on getting those packs as well. So make sure, guys, throughout the competition, there's still going to be a few more giveaways coming on through from that there. So always be throwing out those hashtag Let's Be Mates. And obviously a big thank you to
You'll be my mate, right, Mendrix?
Sorry?
I said you'll be my mate, right, Mendrix?
Always going to be my mate.
The real giveaway is the friends that
exactly right that we make along the way on this joyous journey.
Yeah. Looks like, okay, Wet Goose playing a Frostweave Dungeoneer. That makes some friends there. Look at that board.
Very
See,
strong
this is what I mean, right? You want the mage deck wants to be putting on a bit more pressure, I think.
But I don't know how it's going to go against JJ's, because look, like JJ's got such a big refill when the time comes around as well. I mean, part of the advantage of being the mage, of course, is that eventually you'll have more mana to use your hero power as time goes on as well. And obviously drop those spells down, and JJ's going to be very happy to just sort of go, yep, cool, let me just completely reset the board there in that mana, refill myself up when I've got the cards in hand ready to roll. The combination that we saw before was just absolutely monstrous. And even if you do whittle down that HP, he's going to refill with a ridiculous amount of armor. And of course, a very, very scary board of monsters to deal with.
Yeah, so Wet Goose, I mean, yeah, again, this is a small sample size, right? We're going to have to watch closely how this mage deck evolves throughout the league, whether there's changes to it, whether it falls in or out of favor. But to me, this is the one 40-card deck that I wonder whether it's really in your best interest to be playing it, right? Because, okay, we've started to charge up our Fire Blast, and we've started to develop some early game minions of these Frostweave Dungeoneers and their elemental summons. And we've now also started building up our counter-volatile skeletons, but you know, those are kind of different attacks. Like, yeah, we're flooding out the board here, so we're hoping to get some early pressure on. But this, to me, feels like kind of the classic mid-range deck that's a jack of all trades, master of none. And ultimately, like, we're seeing these combo decks and these bigger decks are going over the top of it in the late game where it can't threaten a full combo kill. I don't know, is all of this control and early minions and stuff able to shut down decks like the Imp Warlock that we haven't actually seen, coincidentally, in the late stages of our tournament? Maybe that's the matchup you're playing it for. But, yeah, it certainly doesn't seem like you're putting on enough pressure, and perhaps that's because of the inconsistency of having the 40 cards, whereas, like, okay, you've got the 40 life total, but if you're not winning in the late game, how much is that really doing for you?
Exactly right. I think, and that's the same for both of them. Both of these players, we're just like, who's got the better late game? Who's going to be able to line it up better?
I think I know who's got the better late game. It's the player who just resolved a Celestial Alignment.
Yeah, you can tell. I think part of the reason like this new sort of style is coming into play is, of course, one of the new cards that's available is that window bloom seedsman. You can see was picked up as well. Just being able to draw a nature spell and gain and enter like mana crystal, right? The idea is you're gonna be able to draw a ridiculous amount of those spells. That's the thing that when you do play it, you can see now he's gonna really ramp up and just get a pretty crazy play of it. There goes the Widow Gleam Seedsman, and as you can see now, he's going to have the opportunity to start drawing, and of course, gaining those mana crystals back every time he does it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to structure. Like, something I do really admire in the Hearthstone design, I think is very consistent, is how good they are at making these deck archetypes, right? Because it's one thing, other card games that I play, there's a lot more sort of interaction built into the design of combo decks or deck engines, because you can play cards on your opponent's turn, and that sort of makes everything a lot more fraught when you're trying to set up a combo. But for a game where you can have like a deterministic...
He's got it, I think.
That's it. We got that. We did the combo. Okay. Wow. Sorry, I shouldn't have talked over that, Wet Goose. That was a bit... I
was looking at him like, I think he's got lethal while
that's the difference maker, right? Wet Goose there's no board clear, at least that we saw out of the Druid. So you get to do a lot of damage early on with those skeleton summons, and then hit the huge re-summon off the Deathborn. That spell destroys all the minions or deals 2 damage to them all, but destroys your minions because they're all small. You re-summon all those skeletons. That's the setup that you've been unable to hit because all these warlocks or all these other minion decks have been so diligent in clearing those away, and that's how we multiply the value and produce the early kill. I'm glad we finally got to see it, Mendrix.
Yeah, I mean, I was very interested to see how it completely worked as well, in practice. I understood the theory, but I was sitting there and I'm like, okay, you're still talking. Obviously, he's just outside.
I just fully thought we were still a turn or two away, but I mean, maybe JJ did as well. But yeah, not having a heal or a board clear to sort of stabilize just goes to show this Celestial Intersection. It's good for putting the game heavily in your favor, but you still have to kind of stop your opponent's momentum from before you played it, and that was the part that was missing there. Now we'll get another shot with this Druid deck, JJ, to try and take things out, but my pick, Wet Goose, still in here, still with a fighting chance.
Absolutely, and especially because we know how long it takes normally for these Druid decks to ramp up. I mean, that's why they call it the Ramp Druid scenario. You can sell that things going to be a bit interesting for Wet Goosey. Of course, is looking for the line combination to get that win. But what's also interesting here is you can see Jado's actually already changed that initial play as well. Actually, instead of holding on to that Widowblade Seedsman is actually playing out early, is beginning to ramp up a completely different way as well. Happy to play out this Wildheart buff as well. I feel like what's really happening here now as well is the fact that, hey, now that I don't have to actually just, bide my time, I can actually just push a little bit quicker and everything. You can see here JJ is just immediately ramping up as fast as possible to that 10 mana to start getting out those big cards that Wet Goose is going to have to find a way to answer, because yes, he's got a lot of abilities to create, to actually suck out life or, obviously clear the board, but these are big minions that you need to take out. Like, you need a hell of a lot of spells and resources, and most of what Wet Goose is running is AoE clear. Oh,
that's a very slight miss on the dredge there. Not quite enough mana to play the Malagos, but you understand the percentages. You know the mana cost in your deck when you play that. Still happy to get a free spell, essentially. And yeah, you're right. I mean, part of the different sequencing from JJ is just the cards that you draw, right? Like, if you have the Widow Blue Seedsman early game and that's like the best play you have on turn 4, that's what you play, right? The point is to ramp as fast as you can. But yeah, you're right in that in lieu of even having the Celestial Intersection early, it's important to just have all this mana, so at least you can start throwing things out on the board. And one other thing that was crucial last game, there were 2 Earthen Scales in hand, right? Like, that's the best way to not die early, but you just couldn't find a good target for them. This time, with how early we're up to 10 mana and still at 40 life, and with the Onyxia in hand, that's probably going to be able to stay alive long enough to become a target for those scales, even if you don't, just ramp to 12. That seems a lot more threatening for Wet Goose. That is a lot of life to have to tackle.
Yeah, and we're going to see how that unfolds now. Of course, JJ still needs to draw that next card. Wet Goose, if he does win this, does need to beat JJ another 2 times directly afterwards. Yeah. JJ just needs to win it this one time. So we're closing in very soon to what would possibly be the end of the tournament. Or perhaps we'll be able to get a little bit longer if Wet Goose is able to come on through with this very successful Warlock we've actually seen has been performing quite well throughout the tournament.
Yeah. It's definitely, all the hype coming into this was about the Imp Warlock, and I still believe in that deck, but we're showing the previous build of Warlock still very potent, and yeah, even with those Imp cards, maybe they're better as a combo outlet than they are as a sort of an aggro game plan. Wet Goose electing not to spend the mana there, which is really interesting, but you can kind of see everything's in hand already, and I suppose just didn't want to draw an extra card at the cost of life or filling up the hand too much. Important to just sit tight, because you know that in about a turn, you're going to be able to combo off. And if drawing an extra card for 2 life doesn't decrease that clock until you explode your combo and kill your opponent, there's no point in doing it. So, heads up play to not just make those sorts of automatic moves and really judge the situation.
I feel like okay, here we go. I was going to say perhaps you'd want to follow through with an entire customer. It's going to be the smothering starfish instead. So it's going to use that draw up as well on the back end here. Here comes the Grimoire of Sacrifice as well to clear away the board. Of course, the Nixer itself will still be there, but yeah, here we go.
Unfortunately, that means you're still going to get the Earthen Scales value. So, I mean, it's good. It's definitely good to clear that board away. That's a threatening pile of dragons, but not having a way to actually just finish off a large minion easily with a spell means that not only are we going to get the extra Earthen Scales value potentially, but in the meantime, we can get Amalgam with the deep value and draw another one of our legendary dragons, and Malagos is the pull.
Wow,
so,
it still has so much mana to play with as well, and Rich, another 3 cards coming into play here as well. I mean, there you can see the Earthen Scales comes into, like, there we go, like,
I could not imagine. I was like, if JJ passed, I'm not going to call these players out. Like, JJ may very well be about to close out the tournament, but it would surely be a mistake to not pull the trigger on an Earthen Scales here. Even getting that, not just an extra 8 health, but an extra 9 health is so brutal.
Exactly.
Now you go from needing to blow up 5 minions with the combo to blow up 7 to get the kill.
Yeah, and I mean, 49 HP, you can see why this Prince Renathal is obviously providing that. And even Wet Goose is taking a bit of a pause here is now. Like, I mean, he has quite a bit of an arsenal in hand there, but that is just so much effective HP to choose through.
You have to actually think about, like, what will it actually take to kill you now? Like, what is involved?
Before I didn't need to think. Before I just needed to throw out 2 combos, sweet, cool, easy, done. But now you can see another Ruined Mithril Rod coming out instead. Perhaps just wants to continue drawing, get a little bit more
It has to start with that, because you're going to need to be able to play like 6 cards in one turn here.
And the thing is as well, you can see there were opportunities for JJ to actually have also gotten some silences. Like, there was an option for a Smothering Fish there as well. So you kind of see there going like, does he have an option to silence me? I do need to do this in one turn. I can throw it all out there and take the risk as well. Would be a much more effective risk against JJ because he doesn't really have as many options, but still.
The risk in that case, I think, is more that you might die.
Exactly.
If you spend your turn doing the combo, you're not necessarily challenging their board state, and that's very unfortunate.
Does he use it? Do you think he uses it? Do you like?
I mean, unless you can get the lethal this turn, it seems like your best play, right? Because at this point, you're scared of your opponent comboing out. I guess the one difference is that your opponent is on their second Rune Mithril Rod. Maybe they've discounted their spells to 0, but I mean, realistically, there's only so many spells that can even be discounted that low. So
he's used it as well, and he's also used Earthen Scales just as a little like hit as well.
Yeah, exactly. This is the game plan. 69. Like, combo now.
Like.
Yeah, Dreadlich Tamsin is the best play if you can only play 1 card here, and maybe you get really lucky and the demons help you sort of stay alive and control the board for long enough. But it's getting so hard here for Wet Goose. JJ not relenting, just putting sort of more and more layers of defense between, their life total and the Warlock combo kill. And yeah, that Celestial Intersection is so skull-crushing for these combo decks that sit there with a full hand of cards, trying to go off in 1 turn. Although, actually,
I mean, the thing is, they're discounted though. It's like next
I forgot that the interaction with the Mithril Rod is that since there's still a Mithril Rod available, you actually discount them all to 0. So that does not work as well as I thought it would have. I forgot that we still had access to further discounting from the 1. So yeah, that's maybe not all over, but still, you have to blow up a lot of cards here.
Yeah, well, he's going through.
Kind
of
got it right
now.
No? Oh, no, we're out of mana. Wait, everything costs 0. You just...
Yeah, everything costs 0. You can go for it.
You just do it.
Is it enough?
There's a Hellfire. It kills enough stuff, right? Yeah, with the Naval Mine, you make the Imps, you make the Tamsin, What? Huh?
Nah.
No?
No, we're not. I think he calculated it to be not. Because I think he needed to get through 60... He needs to get through 52, because he used the Earthen Scales.
Yeah, okay. I mean, 52 is still 9. You need to block 9 minions. Good lord. Okay.
I don't think there's enough board slots.
You get 4 Imps, Tamsin, the Mine, the Dread Imp. So that's 7. Yeah. I mean, you have... I guess it's just like how playing out the Null there is almost like not what you want to do, because it doesnn't matter Hellfire. Spice Bread Baker costing 1 is probably the difference maker there, right? Because you have the Entitled Customer, which you could have played first. That's another free minion. So that's
you got lethal on the Battle Cry.
Yeah. Wow, Wet Goose was so close though. Like
he almost had it, but like
cursing the extra hit point on that Null. And honestly, it doesn't, like, the time limit doesn't matter, right? Because that's not a situation that you practice, right? Unless you've put in a million reps with the deck to have been in that exact position before. To have to not only calculate how to put 9 minions on the board and blow them all up with the combo, but to have to do it, you know, while all your spells cost one, well, you have 1 mana crystal and everything costs 0, like, crazy.
How does it operate off that thing? I mean,
Exactly.
and technically you still be able to do it, but like it would be
know.
rough. And again, you're sort of playing off that idea, like, or do we play? Like, how many times do I actually play with that celestial card coming into play, and obviously ruining the amount of mana that I actually have? Because especially, you know, even though he may have had, maybe we might be able to work in that scenario. 9 times out of 10, you might not have, you know, the phylactery in hand ready. You're still digging for it. So you've got the setup there before, but then you have to wait another 4 turns. All of a sudden, things get very difficult after a while.
Yeah, but very well played for JJ in the end. Wet Goose battled hard, but wasn't able to hold on, and that's a quick 2-1 in our grand finals. I think JJ with the winners bracket advantage is just going to claim the first place, get that $50 on hand, and of course waltz into the championship stage of this Hearthstone Open with the first player to go in with top seeding. And congratulations.
Yeah, big congratulations indeed as well. At the same time, Wet Goose may have lost there, but did not lose the war. Still has an opportunity to perhaps get some revenge onto JJ by qualifying into the next round. So not too bad. And another $25 in the pocket too. Cannot complain with that outcome. That being said, though, guys, I'm going to give it to you, Bard, one more time. You know, just to say, hey, any thoughts of the day? Anything in particular you want to do before I do start closing this out?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in today. I think we got some really excellent games. I'm glad we got to see like sort of the full gamut of archetypes, other than the Imp Warlock, the one that we predicted being the most dominant. But we got to see some really cool and interesting decks. Otherwise, I'm very excited to see how it evolves over time. So thanks to all the players for signing up. Unfortunate to lose a player, like Home Master, who did very well last season, but it's also cool to see some fresh blood coming through. And thanks, of course, to our sponsors, Mate Internet and Mobile and McDonald's Australia for helping AEL put on this event. We'll continue to bring you even more great Hearthstone for many more events to come. There's a lot on the table, lots of qualifiers still to get through Mendrix. You and I, we've got a road ahead of us still.
Absolutely. And make sure that you do catch out all of those highlights, those I'm loving it moments, of course, brought to you by McDonald's Australia. You'll be able to see them on Twitter. So without anything else to be said there, guys, really appreciate you hanging around until after the matches. And hopefully we can see more throughout the tournament with you as well. That is both me, Mendrix, and good old Wandering Bard signing off.